Hence, her flow. This is what you call exercising the availability of choice. Sleep on the bed, sleep on the floor, sit on the floor, sit on the chair.
There can only be two assumptions, City. One is choice and the other one is not choice. Forced choice.
Forced choice.
Yes.
Forced choice.
Forced choice.
That's an interesting terminology, Eric. Forced choice.
Yeah.
Like love-hate.
Those of the male species are forced to choose the couch.
The couch is comfortable. The comfort of the couch, should I say, is
You see why I was avoiding this conversation? So how are you, City?
that the comfort of the couch is understated.
It's understated.
And underestimated.
I want to
If
know
it exists.
if you have experienced this geographical location sometime in your life.
You must understand that experience doesn't need to be physical for it to be real.
Okay.
This is an as existential discussion that we're having. So do not ask about the size of the couch in my house and whether I'm referring to the comfort of it. I am merely referring to it from a purely theoretical perspective.
Okay.
How
But-
are you, Eric?
I'm fine.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Good.
You know what is
I got off the bed this morning.
Good for you.
Yes.
you know
Do
what,
it again and again.
You know the beauty of these statements that we keep should we say entertaining ourselves with is, you know, we have no choice but to believe what you're telling us.
Who, Eric, now? That
Even
he's
you.
fine.
There's no way of determining, of corroborating. Can you see us having a conversation with the people who live in your house? Excuse me, today we're just asking, did Nani sleep on the floor? Tell me how you frame that question. Or let's go to Eric's house and ask
Did
them,
Nani sleep on the floor?
Eric, we're just asking, madam, did Eric get off the bed this morning? How do you frame that question? So
That's
leave it as it is. You got off the bed, thank you, sir.
Sawa.
We are very, very happy.
we're good to happy to
You got off the floor, thank you. It is very good. We are happy. Sometimes, yes, it is good.
You're here, that's what matters. All that matters.
You know, I was thinking about this as I was not the bed and the couch and the floor. I was thinking of the formation of a Kenyan sentence, a typical formation of a Kenyan sentence. And 3 words came to mind. Yes, we figured out. There's another one, thank you. Then there's welcome. And I've often wondered, how is it that we actually use these words in a way that it bears meaning, it bears understanding, but if you look at the word for what it's intended, you someone meets you and says, hello? No, they never say hello, they say yes. Start with yes. That one we figured out. And then you say, I'm fine, then they say thank you. And you wonder, what are you thanking this person for? Then you say, I'm also fine. Then he says, welcome. And you're thinking, okay. Okay. Anyway.
This English has been adapted into ways that suit you as an individual. So it is all good.
It is good.
It's all good.
Yep.
Okay, so today we will discuss various things and various topics on the show. It has been World Breastfeeding Week.
Week.
Right? Yeah, not just a day. An entire week commemorating World Breastfeeding. So we'll...
How did I miss that?
How did you miss it?
It's important.
It is.
Now I'm coming at the tail end of it.
demand the refund.
Where were they discussing this matter?
You plus students in this country have lost 2020.
Something this important can happen and I have no clue.
7
Imagine.
days of activity.
Okay, let me tell you about this one so that you don't miss it. Today is International Beer Day.
Yeah.
Today.
Today.
You like that?
No. My mind has gone beyond the day. My mind has arrived at the supplier of the said product.
The said product.
Yes, and what they're doing to contribute to the success of this day.
Are they aware, for example, that today is World Beer Day?
Is there anything that doesn't have a day anymore?
No.
Everything has a day.
No. There are things that don't have days.
Like,
There's no World Thieves Day.
there is.
What's it called?
The
Something.
40th.
Day of the month.
It's the
The 40th day
Of the
that
month.
one.
Oh. See, I mean to
Siku za mwezi ni
so where,
40.
what
There you go.
What I've
City.
arrived at is today is that day when I'm revealed. Yeah? The things that I don't know are not just numerous, but they are plentiful. Okay. Sawa.
Okay, anyway, let's begin the show with tracking COVID-19 in the country and in the world.
Yeah.
What are the numbers?
New cases for the 5th of August, 671 new cases in Kenya, taking the number to 23,873. New recoveries, 603. Total recoveries, 9,930. Unfortunately, 3 new deaths yesterday, taking the total number of deaths in the country to 391. It's interesting. Yeah. 391 deaths in Kenya.
Not 99. Yeah.
You want it to be 99?
No, that's what the statement said.
Are you sure?
So the newspaper is saying
The same newspaper?
number of deaths 399,
Oh, okay.
new cases 538.
What's today's date? I'm
So the
sorry.
number-
Yeah.
I'm looking at the one for the 5th of August. I beg your pardon.
Today is the yes. So
Today is the
yesterday's
7th.
6th. Yes.
So you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
399 deaths. So there were 8 new deaths yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, and 538
38
new
new
cases
cases.
yesterday.
Mm.
Okay, so if we are looking at the numbers around the world, then 19 million, which we knew we would get to yesterday, 256,688. Those are the cases that we are seeing around the world. And if we look at Kenya's cases now, with the correction, 24,411 cases in Kenya. Total recovered of 10,444. And it's just interesting that we looked at this number now, 44 seriously critical or serious stroke critical cases for Kenya right now. The United States have reached and surpassed 5 million cases, 5,032,179, 162,804 deaths is what they're dealing with now.
Okay.
2 million, almost 3 million cases in Brazil, now 2 million cases in India, 871 cases in Russia, and 538,184 cases in South Africa. And this now, for the first time in about 4 weeks, I've seen a reduction in the number of cases per day. However, it's still quite high because they have 9,604 deaths. Mexico, almost 7,000 new cases in the last 24 hours, and that's 6,590 cases with 819 deaths, a little over 10% is what they're looking at, and still continues to suffer the brunt of this. All right. Australia still, again, now with 11 new deaths in the last 6 hours, 408 new cases, they still continue to grapple with what they are seeing there. So, conversations around the world are shifting to so many different things, but COVID still takes center stage. Everybody's still saying, well, what people are now looking forward to is a time where there will be some kind of adequate treatment for this, and secondly, a vaccine. And so studies or reports are showing us from yesterday that maybe this could be one of the quickest turnaround times for a vaccine to come for an illness, a treatment on the market.
You know, the story of the vaccine is good, and the hope it generates is wonderful, but it shouldn't detract us from understanding that there are things that can be done to ensure you limit any chance of actually contracting. COVID. This, in my opinion, is what should be emphasized, because what can be done is within the reach of most people.
To some extent.
Yes. And the extent to which it is not?
Is the inevitable ones.
You see
Where
the...
you actually ended up, so you've done everything. Like the people who will talk about the kind of measures that they take. You wash your hands regularly, you were putting on a mask, then you went somewhere because you needed to leave and you interacted with people. and you ended up, touching a surface, touching your nose, scratching your eye, caught COVID. The thing about this thing is it is so easy for you to get it.
You've actually just described a phenomenon that we have lived with as human beings for a very long time. And you use the word inevitably very well. It's called an accident. You are walking on a pavement which is designated for you to walk on. Some driver loses control, plummets into you on that pavement, and you end up dying. You were doing what you were supposed to do.
Yep.
You were in no way putting yourself in harm's way. But where COVID is concerned, there is a condition called hypoxia. It's an interesting condition, and it's baffling doctors. The UK has reported this, and other countries have reported it. It's low levels of oxygen within your blood. No distress signs. You don't even know you have it because you don't seem to have a problem. But it catches up with you, and by the time it's realized that it's caused damage, you are heading towards meeting your maker.
What?
Yes, so what this means, it shouldn't be alarming, is that with every new disease, expect to encounter things that you would never have thought of. Because the disease comes with, the condition that hadn't been considered.
Yeah.
And the condition that has been considered generates research. And the research in turn also brings out things that ordinarily you would never have figured out, never have bothered to research into. And this is what happens. Now, when you're in the information age that we're in, my friend, you will be bombarded by all sorts of things.
All manner of info.
Yes, exactly. So this is the reality of this, not just this disease. It is the reality of many diseases that we have. For instance, there are many people who are HIV positive, and before people knew they were HIV positive, they were being treated for skin diseases. Because their immune system, being what it was, enabled them to actually open them up to these cleared dermatological issues. And it took time for people to understand that, there was actually a direct relationship between HIV and this.
And this.
Yes, it took time. So even as our knowledge base increases, it is important. That's why my emphasis is that falls in the category of something you can do nothing about. Not really, okay? But the things you can do something about, at least do it so that you have limited the chances.
There you go. And the things that we can actually do about this are, to an extent, free of any kind of huge burden when it comes to finances, when it comes to effort. It's really not something that you say is going to put a dent in your life if you do them.
In this country, there's something worse. You see, if we talk about water, what makes it terrible is that you are not certain that the water that people receive is necessarily safe. So it defeats the purpose of talking about water because that water is more likely to give you even more problems that you didn't
to give you
originally
another
have.
disease on top of.
Yes.
But as long as you've used that water with soap and it's running, at least you've taken care of a bit of, right?
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
We'll be looking at other stories, especially on this COVID. I think there is one of the stories that's in the papers today is with regards to testing and the capacity of testing and the testing results. We'll be talking to somebody who is battling COVID-19, in the trenches of COVID-19, going through home-based care, and she'll be giving us a high experience this morning. Good morning. It's 16 minutes after 6. Let's take a look at the weather, and then we start looking at the big stories that are concluding this week.
.24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. 24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When it comes to content, we go above and beyond to give you wholesome material to get you through your day. And now, with the Summer for Credo promo, we're rewarding you for it. Be sure to read your standard e-paper and tune in to the morning show between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Spice FM, and we could reward you with Safaricom airtime worth 1,000 shillings. It's really that easy.
In Nairobi, clear skies at 12 degrees is what we'll see today. There is an opportunity to be under the rain in the afternoon, though, with highs of 25 and lows of 12. There is a forecast of a shower. And in Nakuru, 14 degrees and mostly cloudy. We'll see thunderstorms later with highs of 21 and lows of 12. Njeri at 13 degrees is partly cloudy for most of the morning. Thunderstorms also in the forecast with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Eldoret this morning is mostly cloudy at 13 degrees. Again, thunderstorms will make a debut here with highs of 19 and lows of 12. Kisumu is partly cloudy at 19 degrees. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 19, with showers expected for later parts of the morning. Partly cloudy in Kakamega at 16 degrees, and it'll be a wet afternoon here as well, with highs of 24 and lows of 14. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 23 degrees. Here too, the showers and sprinkles will come in early with highs of 29 and lows of 23. Malindi is partly cloudy at 24 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 24, and those partly cloudy conditions will continue through most parts of the day. As it will in Kampala, Uganda, where at 18 degrees it's partly cloudy this morning. Highs of 27 and lows of 18. Clear skies will herald the day in Dar es Salaam at 21 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 20 today. Joburg is cloudy and overcast at 6 degrees this morning, highs of 15 and coming down to a crisp low of 4. Lagos at 23 degrees is clear this morning, but it will cloud over later with highs of 28 and lows of 22. It's clear skies in London at 18 degrees, and it'll go up to a very warm London high of 36 degrees and lows of 18. Paris follows in fine form at 22 degrees, clear skies this morning, sunny conditions, and giving a very high temperature for France today with highs of 37 and lows of 21. And New York today, still looking at the dregs of the hurricane that took place a few days ago. Clear skies at the moment at 24 degrees, thunderstorms beckoning for later with highs of 28 and lows of 22.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
21 after 6. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM this morning. Also to on our digital platforms, www.spicefm.co.ke and SpiceFM.ke, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Let's start with today's proverb.
You know, as I was thinking of today's proverb, what occurred to me is the hours we start our transmission, that there are people actually on the road listening. I have to
sound baffled.
Yeah, no, we're not baffled. I want to lift my imaginary hat to these individuals who listen to the show and even chime in and send messages. Once again, I am referring to this gentleman from Mombasa called Charles, who keeps chiming in at this very, very early hour when most people can't even imagine they'd be awake. Now to the proverb.
So Charles is awake at this time.
He is awake at this time.
On the road, listening to Charles.
Yes.
And Charles will get to work and park for a while and then
listen and then go to the office.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like Charles is doing what many people in Nairobi would do, which is leave early to avoid traffic.
And Charles is in Mombasa.
Yeah.
But I can understand there is traffic on that Nyali bridge.
It's just basically avoiding the Nyali, that Kanyali.
Yes. It's a
Kongamano la magari.
And you can't expand the bridge. You can't sort of like say, okay, let's add a few.
And there are no panya routes.
Bridge in a bridge.
Bridge in a bridge.
Okay. This particular saying comes from Zimbabwe. It says, God is good, but never dance the lion. God is good, but never dance with a lion.
Right.
Being Zimbabweans, you You're wondering whether they're talking about people. Whether lion is somebody named Lion.
Please remember that one of the things that part of the world, that part of this continent was known for was its abundance of wildlife.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the population of lions in that country is currently, but if you look at the season when hunting did not have any control, or there was no control on hunting, then a very large population of these lovely animals were actually decimated.
Yeah.
Yes. And the nature of proverbs, that should we say that they emanate at a certain time when the analogy being presented in the proverb is relevant? Yes. Now, years
Don't
later,
tempt fate.
yes, if we get to a point where there are no lions, you'll be wondering, okay, so this lion.
What's up here?
You don't hear of lions, for instance, in Ethiopia, but the former emperor was actually referred to as the Lion of Judah.
The one, eh?
The one.
Okay. The headlines this morning. The Standard has how many headlines here? What Raila risked to lose in Senate vote. We'll look at that shortly. Then there's this one of a 62-year-old woman who left her family for a life in crime. Abandoned home in the year 2000. Kumbe, she had been arrested and jailed and spent how many years in jail? 17 years in jail for various offences, including robbery with violence and preparing a fake title deed. This week, she has been arrested. She's been jailed again for 35 years.
So what we are saying is, given that she's 62 years, if I do quick maths, she will be released when she is 97.
Yep.
Okay.
So she came out and decided to continue this crime.
Well,
The question I would ask is, when people get into crime, do they actually get into crime knowing full well that what they're doing is criminal and that they are breaking the law and that there'll be dire consequences? I have to ask the question because
do they consider this a criminal activity or
Yes.
just a business venture?
yes, or do they just think that it's a business venture?
Was it not you people the other day who said that these people who are entering into this COVID business, that they know very well that what they are doing is stealing?
That's why I'm laughing.
The question still applies. The question still applies because, in all honesty, if you talk to someone who's involved in these illegal activities, you may actually be surprised to find that even as
They
you-
think that
They
what they're
can
doing is
justify it.
okay.
yeah, I mean, there's shock. How can I not see that this is just business? And you wonder, excuse me, at what point these activities that you're involved, at what point do they become a business and they are completely divorced from criminal activity?
I think somebody who is involved in a violent crime and wants to pretend that they do not see that is wrong would be somebody who has an issue.
I am actually taking this discussion and saying wrong is wrong. You know,
In some cases, fraud, somebody who is involved in fraud may be looking at it and not seeing the fraudulent side of things, but just seeing the business side of things. You're defrauding somebody. You
Eric, this one
basically
you have to
just
explain to me.
you saw an opportunity. Like, so you see the youth in Kibra who Chero was complaining about, Chero Tiksei.
Yes, and I was of the
And
view
you're
that
saying
they should be given a commission.
It's a business opportunity.
Yeah, but he has knowledge that this individual and what they were asking for was a decent commission.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same kind of thing that this family from, was it Makueni or Machakos, that's been arrested in the US for doing the 2 billion shillings. They could sit down somewhere and say, I saw an opportunity.
An
Look,
opportunity. I
Look,
took it.
did they agree with no,
The whole family.
You see, the Kibera
I
boys
decided to touch my
agreed.
brothers and sisters.
Kibera boys did not agree. Kibera boys
Offered.
They offered only one option.
Well, the thing is, they offered. There was meaning the opportunity to refuse. But these fellows who decided there's a loophole.
A fraudster offers an opportunity.
Now you see, no, those fellows in Kibera, the fraud would have been if they ended up with 50% of that money or all of it. But they even tell the person that our percentage is this, and that's what they receive.
It's like the Kazim Tani people. Now, we know that there's issues with Kazim
Kazim
Tani,
Tani
and
is
we've been
different.
raising about this, right? Someone comes, City, and gives you the opportunity to get into this Kazim Tani program. Tells you, I am the one who's registering people. I'll get you into this list. and this is how much I'm going to take.
Eric,
He tells you upfront.
No. He is not supposed to do that.
I've negotiated for you.
No.
900 bob.
It's very different. You're talking about a government scheme that is actually intended for the youth. There is no part of that scheme which says that middlemen should also apply. So and this is what they will get. There's no such thing. It is government, youth.
Yep.
You apply or you register,
Yep.
you are employed. Direct. There is no room for middlemen.
But in this case, this auntie knew that what she was doing was wrong. You know?
Clearly.
Look here. Wairimu started off her career life in the public service as a secretary in the Ministry of Cooperatives. She rose through the ranks to her last position as a senior secretary at the ministry before quitting. The Pangani Girls High School and Kenyatta University alumnus walked out on her family in 2000, never to return. She left her two teenage children under the care of their father. Very little was known of her whereabouts, her daughter revealed yesterday. On Wednesday, a chief magistrate's court in Loitoktok sealed the granny's fate after handing her the lengthy jail term. Now, before this, she had spent 17 years in jail for various offences, including robbery with violence, theft, and preparing a fake title deed. She had left Shimolatewa prison in 2016 through the presidential pardon after serving a 14-year jail term. With her husband dead, her now grown-up son and daughter were happy that she had finally left jail and were looking forward to spending time together. But this was not to be, as Wairimu was soon back to her old ways. She was arrested last year for violently robbing a motorist of his lorry on April 17th, 2019 at Kibwezi in Makueni County.
This one is a criminal.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way you've narrated it. It has crime written all over it.
Yeah.
She knew what she was doing.
She did.
Yeah.
She's, according to the DCI, she's among a gang that operates between Nairobi, Mombasa, and Nakuru, notorious for theft of lorries and probox vehicles, which are then sold in neighboring Tanzania. Lorry kidogo Kibwezi, it has crossed the border. It's in TZ. Kenyan cops are looking for it all over. Thing has Tanzanian numbers, already gone.
Finish.
35 years in jail. So when these stories were doing the rounds yesterday, especially on social media, there was a Swahili tweet. Mama afungwa miaka 35 kwa wizi wa mabavu. So someone tweeted,
violent robbery.
yeah,
okay.
Someone tweeted and asked, so she's been jailed for 35 years for stealing ribs.
Direct translation, mabavu is ribs.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
But in the context, it means it's violence.
It's robbery with violence. Okay.
What is it that... Anyway, discussion for another day.
Yeah, that one, she basically chose a life in crime, and
She did.
I don't think she has any regrets. As far as she's concerned, she's just caught. She's hoping for another presidential pardon, probably. 6:30, let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. Charles, tell us how Mombasa is looking this morning, and then we can tell everybody else what we expect Nyali Bridge this morning. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, Mombasa Road is looking really good heading out towards the CBD. We don't see much of an issue right now, although it is still early times. So let's see what it looks like in a short while. We know that we have this announcement from Kura about Outer Ring Thika Road overpass tomorrow at the GSU headquarters, and it will be closed from tomorrow until Sunday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to allow installation of the footbridge truss. So now that takes place this weekend. Hopefully that will ease traffic then coming from Monday. So Thika-bound traffic, you're requested to use the KCA University underpass to join Thika Road, and motorists are advised to take precaution while approaching the area and follow the respective signs provided. So Kura's warning you in advance. They didn't do that this week, so they're warning you in advance for the weekend so that you know what to do. So there was a fire at Umoja this morning in Tena at Umoja Estate, and that has been taken care of, though it's causing some massive traffic in that area already. We want to take a look at that and see that it'll be opened up soon. Police and emergency services are on the way. An accident at Pipeline last night is seeing that has not been taken care of yet. And on your way to Tajmore, 4 cars were involved, and it's still being removed as we speak, or rather being paid attention to. So we have little pockets of trouble here and there, but generally traffic is not too bad at the moment. We'll take a look at what it looks like in a short while. Let us also know what you see. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Let's share. It's a Friday. We want to make it as easy as possible.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
26 minutes.
94.4 Spice
Let's
FM.
look at other big stories of the day. What do you have, Nduh?
Okay.
Or CT?
No.
Yeah.
This big story is not really a headline. It's like a snippet on page 4 in a corner.
Please go.
Yes.
No,
Says,
Those are the ones.
Nyandarua, don't fund dam, World Bank told. It's an interesting story in this sense. This development, there's been talk of the World Bank funding a construction of 35 billion Malewa Dam in Kinangop. Now, barely 2 weeks after the senior government officers met the stakeholders who agreed to support the construction, the farmers and experts and flower growers in the region have said that they even have an association called Naivasha Water Resources Users Association, that the dam spells doom for the troubled water body whose water levels are currently on the rise. Sounds a bit of a contradiction to me. Water on the rise, it will cause a problem. Why this caught my attention? We've been talking about the great... Yes.
Go on.
Yes. The Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. And we've talked about dams being part of a solution to some of these perennial problems we have with excess water, etc., etc. Now here we have a situation where in our own country, you've got funding, the government has agreed, funders have agreed, and then those who benefit from this water have some complaints. Or should I say they've pitched a fit and they say, no, this is going to be a problem. Begs the question. Were they not spoken to? Were they not consulted?
It's part of it,
Yes.
I guess. It's part of the impact assessment, or should be part of the impact assessment, due diligence being conducted. Basically, what they're saying is that the rivers that will be used to create this dam is the one that, supplies water to Lake Naivasha.
True.
And damming that river then restricts the flow of water into the lake.
Yes.
Now, the users of the water in the lake are the ones who are saying, now, surely.
Now, you see, the users of the water in Lake Victoria have not pitched a fit about that dam. Not really.
Lake Victoria, Lake Naivasha.
Oh, no. I've taken it. You see, I'm drawing parallels here. Remember, the Nile and Lake Victoria joined at the hip. Okay? Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. They've entered this discussion about the Nile and the possibilities of harm being caused by the Great Renaissance Dam, etc., etc. But they've simply joined it to try and find peace. They haven't pitched a fit.
Because they're not going to be affected at all by that section of a dam.
There's a point I'm getting at, and you are absolutely right. I am saying that this need not be an issue. That the association has raised these issues is now the opportunity for due diligence to be not spoken about, but to be displayed and to show that those concerns had been considered and that they need not worry about harm being brought about by the construction of this dam. Because for a dam to be built, usually there's some benefit. They don't start building a dam so that they can cause harm.
Yeah.
You build a dam so that some benefit can be derived.
There's benefit and there is impact downstream.
Yes.
No, I think it's just balancing the two and showing the people who are, the users of Lake Naivasha water that, well, you'll still be able to get adequate supply of the water.
You need not worry.
Your concerns will be addressed.
Yes.
Because dams are built everywhere. Every time there's a dam being built, you have to think about the people downstream. What's going to be the impact of that? Even when the dam
What I find
overflows.
interesting is, would one go into a construction of a 35 billion shillings dam and not go through the process of ensuring that due diligence is done? That's a lot of money.
I think this conversation is arising during that due diligence process.
All right.
I think this is when now you're doing the environmental impact assessment and you're inviting the stakeholders to come to give now their views.
Excellent.
Okay.
Huh?
So, all eyes on new auditor as hunt for COVID-19 billions begins. So apparently there's a hunt and it has just started. In his Labor Day speech, President Kenyatta said every shilling, every cent will be accounted for. And this is just a byline. Senate orders Gathungu to probe how the money meant to fight the pandemic was spent, as the Treasury CS gives all ministries until next Friday to account for their expenditures. So all of those things that we're seeing yesterday about how, source unknown, amount unknown. You have a week to sort that out. In a twin assault on those milking COVID-19 billions as the country bleeds, the National Treasury and Parliament has ordered immediate special probes into government spending. Against the backdrop of millionaires being minted overnight, runaway spending at inflated costs and missing essentials, Senate's ad hoc committee on COVID-19 last evening ordered new Auditor General Nancy Gathungu to conduct a special probe into the monies national and county governments have channeled towards fighting the pandemic. And in Treasury, Cabinet Secretary Kuyatani gave all government ministries, including the Ministry of Health, until Friday next week to give an account of their COVID-19 related expenditures. In a budget review that was done towards the end of the financial year 2019-2020, Yatani had said the government would spend 40.3 billion shillings on COVID-19 related expenditure. Most of the money was to be used to try to stop the spread of the disease and cushion the vulnerable population against adverse effects, including massive job losses. So there's a committee that has been set up, and the committee requests, and I quote, you to undertake the special audit on the utilization of funds allocated to and appropriated by the 47 county governments in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. So all these things were being told yesterday about unknown amounts, unknown yet to be. Now, sorry, but you're going to have to say what it was used for and what was done with it.
I am hoping that when it is revealed, and it will be revealed, that these monies were in many cases used inappropriately, that appropriate action will be taken.
I really do hope so.
Yes.
I think what I would have, I'd be happier to see is a special audit, not just the ordinary audit, but a special audit of COVID-19 from funds to decisions. Special. And it's very clear that this is
just a COVID audit.
This is a COVID audit. Because right now, what we are seeing here is this is the committee that was previously chaired by Sakaja, the Senate committee, ad hoc committee on COVID-19. It's asking the Auditor General to go ahead and audit. She may respond and say, yeah, we're in the process.
But they've been ordered to conduct a specialized probe into the monies national and county governments have channeled towards fighting the pandemic.
Yeah. And we're leaving it to them to decide whether I wish the Auditor General would come out herself and say, you know what? So we have seen the concern from the public, and we are instituting a special audit, and this is how we're going to do it.
It's interesting. This lady has just taken up the job. Hey, does it get hotter than this?
Absolutely not.
Thrown into the deep end, 1, 2, 3, go.
No, I was thinking more of a den of lions.
Absolutely not. The Treasury is asking the Health Ministry to give an account within how many days again?
A week from
Surely.
today.
But
Some of these things are rubber stamp moves. That's why I'm saying, as long as you expect the government to come up with some of these things and say, as the National Treasury, we've written to the Health Ministry asking that you account, and then they'll receive some account and they'll tick a box and say, we asked, we received. Move.
May they proceed in that manner, because questions will still be asked. See, the thing about an audit and a report, it gives you information and it gives you details that you can now discuss in detail. You see? Look at the discussions that have been had around the stalemate that we have and the Senate. With every passing day, the discussions get more and more interesting, and more issues are brought to the fore. So, let them tick the box.
They're just ticking boxes, because actually, if you go further in the story, you'll realize that the National Treasury is asking all departments that received money for emergencies, all parastatals of until August 14th, to give an account of this disaster-related expenditures, including on the recent desert locust infestation and the country's food security threat via floods. Yeah. And they've been given until the...
Eric, can I ask the question? I thought this was a normal process, because with government disbursements...
your account.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. This is procedural.
This is not a new thing that they're talking about. You're given monies. You see, a time is going to come when they'll want more money.
Yeah.
And usually you're not getting more money until you have detailed how you spent the previous one in line with what you were supposed to do. Normal.
And this has happened all the time, and money has still been stolen.
So now my question is, this probe and all of this, the sudden hullabaloo, is it as a result of the different murmurings that have been going on, or they suddenly realize that actually, you know what, since all this money has been spent, it's about time that we got a report in terms of how? Exactly. So there's been a lot of noise that has been made recently, and maybe somebody, hand on head says, okay, you know what? These murmurings must result in something. Let's find out what's going on.
Actually, it's more likely to be, let me ensure I distance myself completely from this thing. Let me demonstrate that I have done due diligence, so that when the fan hits the fan, I will clearly be in a
demonstrate.
position yes, that I had done what
I sought answers, and these are the answers that I received.
This is what they said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whether it was true or not, or whatever, is not the point.
But it's been documented. It's clear. These are the steps that were taken.
Yeah.
Remember, this debate about these monies have been going on for some time before they started becoming headline issues. The question was that 5 billion which was given to the counties. Remember the saga? Remember the drama it brought out?
Yep.
Oh, only 21 counties. Then an inspection is done. 5 counties are ready. 5. So you wonder, hey, what's the relationship between 21 and 5?
It's not even a multiple of the other.
Did I miss something here? And just when you think it is safe to get out of the water, you suddenly realize that in addition to that, it's not even trying to buy. See, schools are closed, and boarding schools have beds. Beds from schools,
Bring them here. Add.
I mean, it is a scandal of enormous proportions. And then you have one county telling you, we are expecting 200 beds, but there's a slight problem here. We are not sure where to put them. You're thinking, "Oi."
Just when you're about to get out of the water, you realize there's no shore in sight.
None.
I think hope for us lies in a multi-pronged approach in this. For example, that what do they call themselves? The ESCC and the others, the working group.
Or that working group that takes security and other together. Yes.
Those ones. If those ones now worked with the new Auditor General and said, let's launch an audit into COVID-19.
That would be different, eh?
Now that, and then it's very clear that we have within certain timelines, and we expect to give results within this time, and we shall present a report to Parliament. Then that, I would see some movement. This one, Senate Ad Hoc Committee wants to continue being relevant. So it asks for reports.
Which is part of what they should be doing anyway.
That's what they do. They were created as an ad hoc committee until COVID is eradicated from the country. That Senate ad hoc committee will continue
Remains in
sitting,
place.
and as long as they sit and they ask for reports or they review reports, they get allowances. 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. What's happening on the roads? If you are anywhere where there's anything happening on the roads, let us know so that in 13 minutes we'll tell everybody. Okay? But for now, time for a quick break, and then we look at other big stories of the morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Now, 12
FM.
minutes to 7 o'clock. We are still looking at the big stories of the day this morning. There are a number of stories here about burial and death.
Why are you
Relatives,
sounding so somber?
because there are some 20 unclaimed bodies that are going to be disposed of in Naivasha Sub-County Hospital mortuary. In a notice yesterday, the hospital said some of the bodies have been unclaimed for over 4 months, affecting services at the facility. And the move is coming at a time when the county has run out of cemetery land. This is Nakuru County. The notice said the bodies will be disposed in Longonot Cemetery on the outskirts of Naivasha town. That is one. Another story here talks about bodies of men are more likely to be unclaimed for burial compared to women. In a notice published by the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, out of 158 bodies lying unclaimed at the city mortuary and Bagathi Funeral Home, 137 are male. The public notice was put in accordance with the Public Health Act to inform the public to go to the mortuary and identify their kin, failure to which the government will dispose of these bodies. Among the bodies are 5 fetuses, unidentified skull. The unclaimed bodies have been in the mortuaries from December 2018 up to April 2019. Sudden death is cited for most bodies at 47, accident victims 19 cases, drowning also among the causes of death with 13 bodies. 10 of the bodies were identified as victims of shootings. Suicide cases was 6.
Wow.
These are people who have families, and you get to a point where we're talking about an unclaimed body.
But this isn't new. It's just that there are more cases of people who are dying now. But unclaimed bodies have always existed.
It's always been there.
In fact, if you want to understand this well, over a long period of time, many of these unclaimed bodies form part of the cadavers that are used by medical students when they are trying to figure out the anatomy of human beings. Yes. So it's not as though they don't have their uses. They do. But the numbers are beginning to become alarming. In fact, Naivasha are in the news for, finding burial places for these bodies that are unclaimed. Because if you're unclaimed and you're in the mortuary, you're occupying space.
Yeah.
So after a period of time, they have to remove
You
those
need to be
bodies so
removed.
that, yes, other people who may have passed away can also find, should we say, a holding place they await claims.
But you know why I'm raising this issue is because you'd expect many of the times you'll hear in one corner of the country or in some families have reported that their kin are missing, and that case goes and becomes a cold case in a police station somewhere. Then there are bodies of people who, and you can see the majority of them are sudden death, accident, right, drowning, which means that this is somebody who was alive and living their life normally, and there were people who knew this person. There were friends, there were colleagues, there were family members. You die, you're picked up by police, you're taken to a mortuary, and the mortuary is not able to identify you. I'm sure somewhere there are people who are sitting and wondering.
And looking for you.
Yeah, looking for you. It's, for me, there's a disconnect somewhere in the system.
It's quite unsettling to think that. Because remember yesterday we read the story of this lady who on the anniversary of her husband's death continues to put in an obituary.
Yep.
So how many more cases like that where, murders have gone unsolved, there's been a plea to have something done, it's not been done. Somebody disappears. So there must be quite a number out there whereby, you just don't know what happened to your kin. Nobody got in touch. Nobody was able to answer questions that you had. So it is a bit unsettling in terms of then the system doesn't go end to end. It's not through and through.
It's not through.
It really isn't.
Because there's a police station somewhere or a chief's office somewhere that has a report of a missing person.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Somewhere. And then there are people who are holding on to a body in a mortuary. Look at the case of, for example, Professor Ken Olibora. Man is in hospital, man dies, man goes into a mortuary. That is one side. And then there's the other side where kin are looking for their loved one.
And this is a case of someone who is known.
This is a case of someone who's
very well known.
Yep.
Right.
So it was easy and faster to actually identify and say,
how many are
this happened.
Because if you look at the list of the causes of death that have been presented in the media, mob justice, all manner of things, disease, all manner
police
of things.
shooting.
That one takes a very eminent position.
Right.
Now, you actually ask yourself, surely, and yet alongside that, stories of families looking for their loved ones.
For years and years. And they say so-and-so just disappeared. They had gone to Nairobi. Can you imagine the case of that Mathare man? If the people hadn't demonstrated and started telling the story of, we know so-and-so, we know so-and-so, we know Baite, would never have known. It would have been another case of police have shot someone, police have picked a body, police have taken it to a morgue, and the family of this Vaite in Meru just says, our dad went to Nairobi, he used to communicate with us, and then he stopped communicating, and that's the end of that story. Unidentified body, public notice issued. You don't come to collect your body within this time. We're going to dispose of the body.
Yeah.
Body disposed of. The family in Meru has no clue that there was even a public notice, that they could have even thought of going to city mortuary in Nairobi.
No. Yet there are stories of people who, when their loved ones suddenly disappear, the first place they go to is the mortuary.
Yeah.
First. And if the body isn't there, or the body hasn't been identified, if you've ever been to a mortuary, it is an extremely harrowing affair.
It is.
You'd think it's an orderly place. Bodies are piled on top of each other, just so that you understand it. So if you're looking for this body, you have to unpack. I thought I should just mention.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
It is quite.
Uh-huh.
So the government is all set to blacklist various businesses associated with drug dealers in the coming weeks. In a new push to vanquish the cartels that have been operating under the guise of legal business, it will also continue to demand stringent measures on gambling. Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i said that the names of blacklisted drug-related businesses will be published in a Gazette notice, a move that will expose drug trafficking organizations that profit from suffering families. I have the list with me, he said, and we shall blacklist these organizations in a few weeks. The twin problems of drugs and gambling have been Dr. Matiang'i's waking nightmare in President Kenyatta's government. It will be the first time in a decade that the government will go public on organizations that are associated with drug cartels, ever since former Internal Security Minister George Saitoti in December 2010 named 6 members of parliament and a Mombasa tycoon in connection with the drugs trade. So this will be interesting to see in a couple of weeks how this pans out.
I can only wait to see. I'll believe it when I see it.
This is he not a man who does what he says?
Who?
Fred Matiang'i.
Fred Matiang'i.
Not necessarily.
He said he has a list with him. He's going to publish the list because he's tired of this drama. It's been his waking nightmare.
Today is
for
Friday.
The time that he's been
the National Gazette is published on Fridays. Could have done that today.
Listen,
No, he said he has a list and he's going to do it.
I don't doubt for a single second that he means well, and that's what he purposes to do. Okay? But I characterize him with strong statements, powerful statements. But if you follow those statements, usually you will realize that beyond the statements, there's a lot that needs to be done that perhaps is not within even his reach or grasp.
There's no
He
powerful
may be
action.
CS. He may be CS. He is CS. But there are certain things. If the president of the nation can have a situation where he himself is helpless and he wonders, how on earth do I go about this? What about a CS?
So you're saying there's powerful statements, but it's not followed by powerful action.
I would have preferred if the action was there and then it was explained by the statements. We hear too many words where problems are concerned in this country. That's what I'm trying to say.
When Professor Saitoti was reading that statement in Parliament, it was after immense pressure. There was immense local and international pressure. There was the push to review our laws and all those things. And the CS, then the Minister for Interior, came to the Parliament and said, you know what, here, I'm tabling this, and we're going to take more and more serious action. Why?
So until and unless there's...
Let's just end it there.
So are we saying that such decisions or such things that should be done, if there is enough local and international pressure, then we'll probably see something like this. But
Political
for now,
will.
it's just words.
Political will.
Political will often requires a little assistance. And that's where lobbying, that's where all these activities that you find that civil society engages in comes in. Because on their own, this COVID issue has been in the media. This COVID issue has been a subject of serious discussion. The government is now doing something. Unfortunately, the same applies to strikes when we hear health workers going on strike. Same story. Talk. They say, no, enough talk. We're taking industrial action. It's the same. So if there is to be a change, can we see the change beginning and then the discussion can follow later?
Yeah, like I said, he means well. He may mean well. I'll believe it when I see that Gazette notice saying these companies have been blacklisted because of their involvement
and they have been named.
Where?
So for now, we should call you
Top of the hour.
Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas
City,
and Thomas.
today's proverb.
Today's proverb, God is good,
All the time.
but never dance with a lion. Zimbabwean saying,
God is good, but never dance with a lion. Not never dances with a lion.
no, never dance.
Never dance.
Usicheze dansi na Simba.
Yeah, just to make sure, if you add an S there, you're basically changing the whole meaning of this proverb. All right. God is good, but never dance with a lion. Coming up to 7 o'clock, this is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, so Mombasa Road is still looking very good right now. Right around Cabana says be a little bit of a hold up, but that won't be too crazy. And then getting towards General Motors and then out through to Nyayo Stadium roundabout. As you get to Huru Highway, it should be absolutely fine for us today. We don't see too much traffic. We'll look at Thika Road where certain parts of the road will be closed from tomorrow. But for today, right around Survey, backed up till Safari Park Hotel. It's moving very slowly, but it's moving all the same. Not too much drama as you then head towards the CBD. Coming out of Westlands, Langata Road and Ngong Road is also looking very good. Traffic has not yet quite begun. Still the first few weeks of the month. Let's see how it looks like in a couple of minutes, or rather in a few minutes or so. We'll let you know. You let us know as well. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Give us that info so we can spread the word.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on www.spicefm.co.ke as well as SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And we are in Malindi 97.7, Njeri 90.9, Eldoret 96.7, 96.0 in Nakuru, Kisumu 102.5, Mombasa 87.9 and 94.4 in Nairobi. Let's talk COVID-19 and the battle against COVID-19 by all Kenyans. We'll be talking to somebody who has tested positive and has been battling COVID-19 through home-based care. But as we do that as well, let's look at what the government has been doing. So we have raised the issue of our testing capacity in the country for quite a while. So far, since the beginning, we have only tested 335,318 samples so far. But we are seeing also the government revising its protocols on testing. For instance, previously you required to undergo 2 consecutive negative tests within 24 hours for you to be declared COVID-free. And now, even from CDC's advisory, the government, through Health Director General Patrick Amoth, have discharged new protocols which rule out the need for a second test for patients whose symptoms have cleared. So once you've cleared, your symptoms have cleared, and you're seeing that this is around page 8 of the standard, and there's clear indication that really your symptoms that were there have cleared, and you've even tested. Screening has just shown that you don't have a high temperature anymore. You're basically just clear to go home. No need for us to do another test on you. But it also raises the other issue, and these are the complaints that have been coming from the counties. The length and the amount of time it takes before you receive your results and what that means in the fight against COVID. For instance, yesterday, the Nakuru County, through Governor Lee Kinyanjui, was raising the concern, saying the delay is increasingly putting patients and their contacts in danger. For example, we are yet to receive results of 309 samples taken to Kemri Lab on July 28th, 2020. Such a delay could lead to further spread of the disease. 28th July, samples taken to Kemri Lab. By yesterday, the 6th of August, results haven't come yet. And those people are not somewhere confined or quarantined. Some of them are in hospital. Others have been discharged to go back home. And contact tracing has not even commenced because we don't know how many people have tested positive. We'll talk to Cherotich Sei, who is an active citizen, a regular on this show. She has been our guest host a couple of times. Cherotich went out to publicly and said, you know what, guys, I tested positive for COVID-19. I am treating myself through home-based care at home. It has been a number of days. And then at the end of the 14 days, of course, she took another test to find out whether she still has the symptoms. Waited a couple of days. Results came back, still positive. So let's hear the experience that Chero has gone through. But also, as we raise the issue of tests, how long it's taking to test, and this whole home-based care and what it means. Chero, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, my friends.
Good morning, Chero.
How are you?
We're well.
We are well. And it's good to hear you this morning. You sound energetic. Not as you usually do, but...
I'm almost there.
You're almost getting back there.
Yes.
How many days since you tested positive?
This is my 25th day this is my 25th day in total since I started to self-quarantine. And it is about 16 days since I tested positive. I tested positive on the 22nd of July. But I first went into self-quarantine on the 14th of July. And today is the 7th of August. So 25 days in total that I've been in quarantine, in isolation.
So from the 14th to the 22nd, when you tested positive, those are 8 days. Explain this gap.
What I was doing, because Monday, the 13th of July, I felt like I was catching a cold, and when you have children in the household, it's very possible to pick up a homa from them and that type of thing. So you first of all want to eliminate and rule out the usual. And I went to bed that night on the 13th, and I last caught malaria when I was 10 years old, I think, which is 100 years ago if you think about it. But I felt the feelings of malaria, the pain, the aches, and then I started shaking. I had the chills. I was hot, but I still went to bed as usual. But in the morning, I banished everyone who ever comes into my room from my room, including the dear husband. And I immediately created a cordon, because in the morning I realized this is something different than usual. And I have never felt as I have felt the first 14, 15 days of my illness. So I took that week, which was a terrible week. If you want to hear about the symptoms later or now, I can share them with you. But it was a very difficult week. The exhaustion, you can't even wake up. You can't shower. You going to the bathroom is a major effort. You're wiped out. And, there are people who have varying degrees of symptoms, and many are completely asymptomatic. I think I had a pretty heavy set of symptoms, but not enough to land me in hospital because I was breathing okay. But I learned something later on from my physician about something called happy hypoxia, hypoxemia, I believe, which means that you don't have the symptoms of somebody who is struggling to breathe, but your oxygen levels are dropping rapidly. And you don't know. You're just there. You think you're just sick. So who knows? Because I did not have an oximeter at home. Yeah. So I spent the first week trying to take care of myself, completely isolated. We went straight into COVID protocols in the house, even before I knew I was positive for COVID. But mostly paracetamol, honey, lemon, ginger, and I was wiped out. I was just sleeping. When people would call me, I just stopped taking the phone. Sending a text was a big headache for me, because I couldn't even get my brain to focus on texting, and so on and so forth. So after day number 6, 7, then I said I need to go for a test. And that is when I now set up the process for applying for an appointment to go for a test. And I had my test done at the very impeccable labs of the International Organization for Migration, IOM. It is a service that I think is currently extended to the INGOs, the diplomatic community, the UN, and so on. But I'm a former staff member of the IOM, so they extended the courtesy to me. And I went in for a test. And the good thing with their tests is you get the results within a couple of hours. So when I went in on the 22nd of July, I had my test done, and by the afternoon, I got the call from the psychosocial counselor and the emailed test results that I had COVID. And that is now when I went into treatment protocols. I called my physician who had referred me for the test, and then she prescribed a set of medication for me, and that is what I have been taking, as well as resting, as well as the continued protocols of isolation. I speak to my family regularly. They even can stand at the door because it's a distance, and I can say, how are you doing? And they can drop food and drink at the door. Or if I have myself to go to the kitchen, I do it late at night when there's nobody around and my hands are washed and I'm wearing a mask and all the protocols. So that's what I've been doing, and this is the 25th day. I can say by the 2.5 week of illness, I started to turn the corner and I started to feel much better. And today I will put myself at 85 to 90% recovered.
Cheryl, if you were to go through it in your mind, would it ever have connected with you where you would have, whom you may have come in contact with, or how you may have contracted COVID? Did it ever cross your mind?
That's a good question, because the first thing that happens, and what the IOM clinic and all other labs and clinics that take our samples do, is they have to report back to MOH at the end of the day and say, we tested X number of people, these were positive, these are negative, and some, I even hear there's an indeterminate result. And so they report that back. So when that happened, and having spoken with some friends who have had COVID, I expected within the next 3-4 days some kind of random call from Ministry of Health. I did not expect Ministry of Health to come to my house and check. No, none of that, because I know they're busy, they're overwhelmed, they're not coping with the numbers. But this is day number 25, and I have never received a single call from MOH. So I went into home-based care on my own using protocols that I had read from Ministry of Health and WHO. And within the parameters and the capacities of the house where I live, I was able now to create a system within that framework. Yep. I also then did my own contact tracing. And I started thinking back, who have I been with? Who was I with, especially the week leading up to my feeling sick? So if I started to feel sick the night of the 13th, the week before, where was I? So I worked my way through the whole list. I called those who I felt I may have been in contact with, but nothing I was doing was different than the usual routine, and it often means that I am home-based. Yeah. But on Saba, we had comrades who were arrested, if you remember correctly, who were trying to demonstrate. And I had a Zoom event all day, but at about 5 p.m., I went down to Central Police Station, observed all the usual protocols, masks, etc., social distance, and I was there with other comrades until about 8 p.m. when everyone was released. So that, you could say, would have been the only off-the-beaten-path place I went to, because that's not where I usually am, thank God. But that was it. But I when I spoke to those I was with at Central, I think everybody is okay. So you cannot tell where you picked this thing up. Was it in the supermarket? Was it a random? Who knows? Because these aerosolized droplets hang and float in the air. They don't drop to the ground immediately because they are so microscopic. They're so small. They can linger in the air. And this is why one of the things I have learned, even when I interact from afar with my family members, is masking is critical. It's absolutely critical. It is those aerosolized droplets in the air. In fact, when I looked at the revised CDC guidelines, they talk about low transmission risk from surfaces, even though you still have to wipe down your surfaces. But imagine if I sneezed on a surface and you, Eric, came and touched it, you would have to touch it, rub your hands in it, then bring your hands to your face, maybe rub your eyes, maybe lick your hands. I mean, so it would really be a lot of exposure to the virus on the surface. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep our surfaces clean, but there's now new studies emerging as to where it is most easy to contract COVID, and it still remains that it's in the air. It is the sneezing, the coughing, the talking, the breathing, with coughing and sneezing being the number one ways projectile push your droplets, if you have COVID, out into the air for other people to breathe.
But even as you say that,
Jero,
as you say that, also from how you described your days, of course, there are times when you would leave home to go for, let's say, shopping at the local shops. You'd meet up with somebody, but you'd ensure that you're masked throughout.
Yes.
But despite all that, despite having the mask throughout, and despite making sure that the people that you're, coming across, even in the supermarket alleys, are either masked or you are keeping a very big distance between you and them, you still end up getting it, and you cannot tell where.
Exactly. It is ubiquitous. It is with us. It is everywhere.
Cheryl, has it changed?
It is becoming endemic.
Has it changed the way you thought of COVID before you got it and now? Has your attitude changed?
Obviously, like if you have been in a road accident, even if you were not the one driving and you didn't cause it, you are forever vigilant, whether you're driving or somebody else is driving, because you are sensitive, because you know the impact of impact. Whereas, and so I always took COVID seriously, even though I have always been against the idea of curfews and lockdowns without a plan to cushion the communities. And we spoke about it the last time I was guest hosting.
Yeah.
I still have never believed that COVID doesn't exist. You know, there are all those people who think this is some conspiracy somewhere and we're being fooled and so on. Yes, there are issues with lab results. There's issues with the pace of testing, or in terms of results being sent back, and that even if people are positive, they have 2-3 days, as you said, Eric, of continuing to infect others while waiting for results. But I have become hyper vigilant, not hysterical. I'm not a hysterical person. I'm also not a hypochondriac. So I make a good case for somebody to have. I'm the best of the type of person who could have symptoms, because I didn't lose the plot. I did not become hysterical. I just went into calm emergency response mode and said, right, this is what needs to happen. And I listened very closely to my body, the symptoms, how I was feeling, if I remember, because I now have a lot of brain fog. So you may tell me that as we spoke about 30 minutes ago, I will tell you what did we speak about. It is real. Some of the neurological impacts. I cannot type a tweet or send a text without editing it 100 times. I will still make mistakes. So there's, and my physician said these are some of the many protracted effects of COVID that we are still learning about and we're still trying to understand. So to answer your question, I am hypervigilant. And let me tell anybody who's walking around with the capacity and the means to wear a mask, and they're not wearing a mask, they are A, not protecting themselves, and B, they're not protecting others. Because safety starts with you. Right. And if you don't protect yourself, then how are you going to protect others? I know that there are many who cannot afford masks, and for that there has to be a plan to make sure. Because again, with your mask, you can't wear your mask like a jacket, an overcoat that you can wear for a month and then you clean it.
Yep.
A mask is something that has to be replaced regularly, because you're coughing into it, breathing into it, sneezing into it. So if you wear the same mask, and the cheapest masks, and I like them too because they're colorful and they don't give you a sense of you're in hospital and dying, are the cloth masks. Those ones, if you now wear it for a week, 2 weeks now, hujaosha, you're like a walking cesspit of germs,
of old germs.
And then you drop it down to your chin, so you're transferring the germs to your chin.
To your face.
So to your face, and then you put it back, and you're often, when you have the blue surgical mask, you're often pinching the top of it so that it sits properly on your nose. So we are constantly touching our faces and touching the mask. So those who cannot afford to have a good set of masks that they regularly replace, there should be a provision. There should be some facilitation, masks to be distributed for people to have them for free. Because the cost of a mask is still less than the cost of treating someone who has COVID. But everybody else who can afford their mask, wear your mask. I see people on social media taking photos. They are not wearing masks.
Big conversation. Let's take a break, Cheryl.
They are not wearing masks.
Let's take a break, allow ourselves to breathe a little bit, and also take a look at what's happening on the weather. We are speaking with Cheryl Say, active citizen. She's been a regular guest host on the show, tested positive for COVID-19 on her 25th day since she developed those symptoms. And she's giving us the experience of home-based care and the journey through COVID-19. Keep it right here, 7:20.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Clear skies forecasted for Nairobi, 12 degrees currently, highs of 25 and lows of 11 with showers possible for the afternoon. In Nakuru, it's 14 degrees and partly cloudy. There's a chance of rain with highs of 21 and lows of 12 through the weekend. And in Njeri this morning at 13 degrees, we'll see thunderstorms later. The possibility of this rain continuing well into Saturday, highs of 23 and lows of 13. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 13 degrees, highs of 19 and lows of 12. And in Kisumu at 20 degrees, it's mostly cloudy, highs of 27 and lows of 18, again with a chance of rain here. Likely to be a wet weekend in Kakamega, highs of 24 and lows of 14 today, and mostly cloudy conditions at the moment. It's mostly sunny in Mombasa at 23. We'll see highs of 29 and lows of 22 with a chance of rain later. Malindi at 23 degrees is mostly sunny this morning. It'll change later though with highs of 28 and lows of 23 and a chance of showers. Kampala is partly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 17, and those partly cloudy conditions going through the most of the day. Dar es Salaam, it'll be a warm day today, highs of 31 and lows of 21. Currently mostly cloudy conditions in the Tanzanian town. 6 degrees and cloudy conditions in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's what we'll see for most parts of today. Highs of 15 and lows of 4. And finally for now in Lagos, clear skies at the moment at 24. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 22 with the possibility of showers in the afternoon.
Mellow Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Situation Room. The conversation continues with active citizen Cherotich Sei, who is giving us her experience with battling COVID-19. On the 14th of July, as she tells us, she developed those symptoms and she felt, hey, this is not just the ordinary cold. So she went into the full protocol of, wait, I am going to put myself in quarantine. And this is even distancing herself from her own family. Her children not accessing her, her husband, who was now moved from the right side of the bed to
The floor.
the floor. Completely different, far from... yeah.
Oh,
And this is where now...
I wasn't aware you were listening.
No, he is listening.
Oh, dear.
I don't know where he is.
Oh,
but
you don't know where he is?
You haven't seen him for 25 days.
No, by the way, I have to really say that these protocols, when you're told you must be absolutely silent in class, every teacher knows that no one will remain absolutely silent, but they give you an extreme parameter so that you do your best to fall as much as possible within the minimum threshold. And I think that is what these protocols are. Because when you look at it, when they say you must change your bedding, wash your things separately, bleach, nobody has the resources to do all of those things.
Yeah.
But I think the messaging is saying, please keep yourself separate. So the idea of sequestering yourself as if you're in solitary confinement without talking to anybody, somebody can open the door and say, hello, how are you? My husband even has a perch on a chair outside the door where sometimes he can open the door, a crack. I have my mask on, windows are open, and we can talk. Because you have to plan the day, you have to discuss different things that need to happen, especially as I started to get better. So you create protocols that work. But kuingia and to sit on the bed to talk to me,
Nothing.
face-to-face, nothing.
But also I can imagine the toll that this has had on your family. I can imagine in those early days when you're saying that the symptoms were really severe, you were completely tired, they are sitting outside, they're not sure how mommy is doing. This must have been a very, very difficult time for them.
I think it was. And when I appeared on Jeff's show last week, Dr. Frank Njenga spoke afterwards, and he spoke at length about some of the effects that COVID and even just staying at home, being generally under home imprisonment, has a negative effect on families. And if you have the luxury of space, then if you're confined to the house and if you have the luxury of a backyard, so it'll just depend on your space parameters and how you're able to live. So there's that. And then now if you add somebody who has tested positive for COVID and is symptomatic, even those who are symptomatic have to stay in isolation. But when you're symptomatic, yes, it brings about stress. My husband was saying he has never seen me this sick. And as I told you, I'm not a hypochondriac. I power my way through illnesses. I usually am the last one. I'm even anti-medication. I try to push till the last possible minute. My doctor had to debate at length with me about every piece of medication that she gave me, because I was like, what is this for and why am I? And here I am dying. I'm sick. And I'm still questioning why I'm being given this medication and what it is meant for. So my family, yes, have been quite worried. I have 2 older teenagers on their way out of high school, and I have a 2-year-old. And I think the older ones were a bit happy that mom is not on their case every single day to see what time they woke up, what they are doing, how they are keeping themselves busy. But they were extremely instrumental. They continue to bring me up my water, bring me up my food, check on me. So because I allowed some level of dialogue and contact, even when I was wiped out in bed and couldn't move, I think that alleviated their sense of concern. And as they have seen me improve from week to week, then I think it has improved. But I cannot underestimate the stress it has. My mother, who is in her 70s, my father, who is almost 80, well, my father didn't suggest it, but my mother had said, should I come to Nairobi? I told her, are you crazy? You're at extremely high risk.
Yes.
You're not coming to that. So people kick into that mode of, what are we going to do? How can we help you? Because you can't do the usual visiting someone. When someone is sick, you visit them.
Right.
You can't visit people when they have COVID. You can't even go to hospital. I've heard this terrible stories of families who have lost loved ones, but they could not even be by their side when they were in hospital and at the time that they passed on. So I consider myself, I also have an attitude of gratitude, because I could have died if you think about it that way. I was quite symptomatic, but somehow, and I don't know why, I don't have a comorbidity. That could be one of the things. I don't have high blood pressure or diabetes or asthma, or some of those things that they say could tend to complicate your recovery. But I'm not saying that everyone who has passed away had a comorbidity. In fact, it could be a case of the happy hypoxia I was telling you about. You're not so bad and your oxygen levels drop and drop. That's why sometimes you see photos of somebody has just died by their taxi, or somebody has just dropped dead somewhere. Maybe their oxygen levels dropped to the point and they didn't realize, and they just thought, oh, I just have a homa. So I'm so grateful that I am still here. I have read about long COVID and the fact that sometimes people like me, because my physician said it's not normal after 22 days of symptoms to still test positive for COVID. And he said, it happens with quite a number of cases, but it's not normal. Usually by 10 days, by 14 days, it has cleared and you're able to go back to the real world. And let me underscore, I'm not a medic. This is experiential. I'm just sharing my experiences as somebody who is positive for COVID. So none of my advice should be seen as medical advice, because I'm not a medic. I'm not a public health specialist and I'm not a medical doctor. So I can just share what my physicians have said and what I have experienced.
Teacher, someone who is now in that unique position of being genuinely empathetic to people who may contact the COVID virus, I want you to just sort of like, if I may, shift your mind to those who don't have the luxury of space and are confronted with the ailment caused by COVID. What do we do to ensure that these people actually stay well? I'm talking about people, for instance, who live in Nairobi, people who live in the areas we refer to as slums, or people who live in places that we call low rent, who honestly don't have this luxury of space. What do you do with such people? I know it's a difficult question I'm asking, but I'd like your thoughts on it.
Thanks. It's not even a difficult question, because I have been thinking about this, advocating around and about this since the very beginning when COVID was declared an emergency in Kenya. I went about it the cash transfer route so that families that are already suffering do not drift further into penury, and also have the wherewithal in the face of loss of income, in the face of loss of livelihood, to be able to support themselves and their families. But when I have gone to underserved communities, slums as they are sometimes called, or densely populated areas, because of the Humanity Kenya work I'm doing, I have come to see, and I already knew it because I'm not a visitor, I'm not a stranger in Jerusalem. I have come to understand even more clearly that it is impossible, excuse me, to quarantine at home. It is impossible to isolate when you have 2 rooms in your house or 1 room in your house. If I lived in a 15 by 10 room in Korogocho and I tested positive for COVID, what are the protocols, really, seriously speaking, that my family can put in place? Number one, I'm the maybe sole breadwinner.
Yep.
And as somebody who has been a single mom for many years, I understand those dynamics. And if I was a sole breadwinner, I have tested positive for COVID. Let's use my 3 children that I have now. I have 3 children. What do I do? How do I sequester myself in the house? How do I stop my trading if I'm selling vegetables or if I have some other biashara?
Yep.
How do I stop all of that?
Right.
How do I isolate myself in my house? How do I use the public ablutions? How am I able to afford the medicine that will be prescribed to me, the antibiotics or anything? And then all these fancy schmancy remedies. Everyone is always saying, use this, use that. I have been on the receiving end of a vast number of crazy sounding remedies which work. I thank and God bless all of those who send me their suggestions.
Yeah.
But most of these remedies are out of the reach of the ordinary wananchi. If you're being told to look for things that are only found in Healthy You, who is going to Healthy You to spend 2,000 bob on some supplement somewhere or some powder somewhere?
Yeah.
So I am so sensitive, CT, to the fact that home-based care is the privilege and the luxury of very few. I'm equally cognizant of the fact that despite efforts, never mind the pervasive corruption that has gone into overdrive and high drive during COVID, but I'm also aware of the fact that MOH is overwhelmed. So much as I say they never called me, I also understand. If you don't have the personnel, if you're not able to keep up with everything that's happening in the country, why are you going to call me? In fact, you will say, phew, that one is taking care of myself.
Yeah.
That one is fine. But now back to what CT was saying. What are we doing? What would I do? Do you know what I would do? I would not announce my COVID results to anybody.
Yep.
I would kazana. I would find my mwarobaini somewhere. I would drink it.
Yep.
I would wear a mask. I would try to keep a bit separate from the kids, and they would not know why I'm not being so close to them.
Yeah.
But I would get on with life. And say, God help us all. Because I cannot afford to be sick. I cannot afford to lie in bed. I have to feed my children. We have to survive. And the day Kenyans understand that support, medical support, is not the privilege of a few, but it is the right of all, then we will wake up and understand that this home-based care thing, as a way of passing the buck to the individual, is not sustainable. And the community spread will be like wildfire, kabisa. We will not be able to stop it. And I will never blame, even for a second, somebody who was in the hypothetical situation that I just described for opting not to share her status with anybody.
Can understand it. Let's take another break at 25 minutes to 8. We are speaking with active citizen Cherotitsei, giving us her journey, 25-day journey through battling COVID-19. Tested positive again after 20 days. The 22nd of July, tested positive the first time. Went into continued isolation and home-based care treatment, and now she's giving us the experience of home-based care treatment. And now we are raising that conversation on what is happening in the country when it comes to testing, the testing protocols, the follow-up, the home-based care, and what happens to people when they're in home-based care treatment. 24 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic.
traffic.
It's moving well on Mombasa Road towards Mlolongo, and then after that towards the SGR, and then down towards Cabanas and General Motors today on Mombasa Road, so it's not looking too terrible from where we are sitting. Officially in traffic hour, but we don't have any craziness as such. All right, so right around in Bakassi, there was that issue, but that seems to have been cleared up. Gong Road moving very well into the CBD, down then through either the City Stadium roundabout or then connecting with Valley Road thereafter and getting into the CBD. Not too bad. Thika Road is moving very smoothly today. Not to forget that tomorrow there are certain parts of the road that will be closed for the weekend, hopefully opened up again on Sunday evening. So plan your trips accordingly going into the weekend, because Thika Road will be affected by that installation of the footbridge truss. Okay, nothing jumping out at us just yet. Let us know what you see. Spice FMKE on Twitter, so we can help keep moving things along.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
21
done right.
8 o'clock. This conversation continues with Cherotich, say, active citizen on fight against COVID-19, especially now when you brought in the conversation on home-based care and the home-based care protocols. City.
Well, my follow-up question is, I wanted to ask Cherotich, there's a lot of the talk around COVID has to do with treatment. Now, what about prevention? Again, I want your thoughts on this.
Okay, well, prevention, one of the things my doctors, the two who have been taking very good care of me via telemedicine, although I had a home-based visit yesterday for the first time. So that's another thing. You can actually consult without going to a clinic and so on and so forth. But one of the things they have both told me is that everybody at one point or another will catch COVID. This is not something that will be eradicated. You know, the way smallpox was eradicated, the way we say kick out polio, this is something that will be with us. I think what is the most important thing is to stave off its landing on you for as long as possible. While the virus has an opportunity to work its way through other less fortunate members of the society who manage to catch it and more or less filter it or soften it or allow it to become something that you can survive. So I believe that in the interim, what everybody must do is keep themselves and the others safe. People talk about good nutrition, supplements, build your immunity. I really try to avoid that because it is, again, the luxury of very few. So, yes, those who can afford a balanced diet 3 times a day, who can afford honey, lemon, garlic, vitamin C, zinc, ginger, all of those who can, yes, do it. Go for it. Boil your concoctions. Feed it to your children. Make sure they drink it. Your cod liver oil, your colloidal silver, your this, your that. There is so much out there. But I am sensitive to the fact that we are going to soon turn the prevention of COVID into an elite exercise that is 100% dependent on the resources you have. Yeah. And the rest of you who don't have money, God help you. And we're not actually talking about you because we know anyway you can't afford it. So if I go somewhere in Kayole and we start talking about how to prevent COVID, and I start describing honey, lemon, ginger, see, people will do control out delete immediately. They'll say, this person is outside the realms. They don't understand our context and our reality. And that's why it goes back to the one thing I keep talking about. You need to cushion families. I was even thinking to myself, families that test COVID positive, who require assistance and facilitation for home-based care, should receive a grant, an unconditional grant that will facilitate, for example, lost income. So if I was working, the same, let's use myself as a single mom with 3 kids somewhere in one of the underserved communities or the informal settlements or slums, and I have lost my job and I was cleaning somewhere or I was doing this or that or the other, I need a grant that will allow me to stay home and recover, because it has replaced at least a nominal amount of my lost income and has allowed me to still take care of my family. If you don't support families practically in a humanitarian manner and with dignity, and offer unconditional cash, and I will be singing and preaching the gospel of cash transfers until kingdom comes, you will not be able to prevent the rapid spread of COVID. People will catch it. We will all catch it eventually.
But also, how about the issue of isolation facilities, Ichero? Because
isolation facilities are not enough.
This whole idea of home-based care, like you said, so somebody tests positive and they still need to stay here with their family, and possibly because of the proximity of living quarters, they are likely going to infect their family members.
They will. I mean, and that is the inevitability. If I had a house the size of my medium bedroom, as you would know in an apartment or a townhouse, the size of a bedroom, if we were all living in equivalent to 1 bedroom, of course I would spread it. By now my kids would have it, my husband would have it, and anybody else who comes to see me. It is inevitable. So I find it ludicrous when people say we are now reverting to home-based care. Moreover, a home-based care that is not based or predicated upon a very solid foundation of outreach and visits to people and facilitation. For example, if someone tests positive, I don't know, maybe Ministry of Health can correct us later on. Do they go home with a pack of masks, of sanitizer, of some basic equipment? Do they say we shall give you your round of drugs free of charge?
No.
Or do they say home-based, goodbye?
Sort yourself out, and then we'll talk to you later.
Then we say that it's alcohol spreading COVID. It's community spread now, and most people.
Which is why I'm raising that
are not
issue.
catching it in bars.
Which is why I'm raising the issue and saying because whereas we support home-based care for those that are able to, then there are others that we should be clear that, you see, home-based care will not work in very many other cases. And that's why you need the isolation facilities. Yes. We still have. I mean, when we had quarantine, we had the quarantine facilities. Schools are still closed. We have the benefit of having boarding schools closed in the country.
I wrote about this in an op-ed in March where I said, and I have worked in emergency humanitarian response for many years, and maybe this is why I'm calm in the face of an emergency, because that's not the moment to panic. But one of the things, and anybody who is an emergency response specialist will tell you, there are protocols that you put in place. I even proposed in that op-ed in March, I said, you can have rub holes. If you don't want to use primary schools and so on because of maybe aspects of fumigation or restoration afterwards, you have these military-style rub holes, big tents, that can be set up in certain parts, in community fields, if they haven't all been grabbed, in different locations of the city. So you zone the city. And you have one for the south, for the north, for the east. You can put 500-600 beds in isolation. So you have the space, and you have medical staff who would be able to take care of the staff of the patients in isolation. So then I would have the responsibility, for example, of saying to my neighbor, tafadhali chunga watoto wangu. Or if I have a relative who I can call to come and stay with my kids for the next 10 days, and I go to that facility and I check myself in, or I get admitted and I have a bed and I have care for the next 14 days or 10 days until my symptoms, or if I'm asymptomatic, or until I am deemed no longer infectious, and then I'm released back to the community.
Cheryl, I'm a bit
it
worried. I'm
is
sorry.
possible.
Just to then I'm a bit worried. I mean, I'm just listening to you now, and I'm hearing what you were able to do and stay at home. And I think it was interesting because earlier you mentioned that not a call, not anything from the Ministry of Health, and we know for a fact that this information is sent to them in terms of who then is tested positive. But then I am worried about so many other people then who have been released into this home-based care, right? And then if there would be anything that they need in terms of information, which for whatever reason they're not able to get on their own, then they're not getting it.
They're not. Look at the cost. Let's now do back of the envelope math. Because we're talking about the social cost, the emotional cost, etc. My test, which I understood is now actually quite an affordable, because it costs $60 compared to other labs that charge $80, $90, $100. I've heard of people paying $10,000 bob for a test. But then if you go to Kenyatta for your test or any other public facility, you have to be symptomatic before somebody will take the time to use their limited resources to test you.
Right.
So if you go privately or you have an organization or a company that can pay for your test, you will go to the usual Lancets, the usual. But I went to the IOM clinic that cost $60. I've done 2 tests. Actually, my husband has also taken 2 tests to be sure, and both times he has come back negative. And one of the people who helped me at home also went for a test and tested negative. So count that. 6,500 times 2 for me, that's 13K. 6,500 times 2 for my husband, that's now 26K in total. And then one staff member, that is 33K that we have spent, 32.5 that we have spent
on tests alone.
Yes. My drugs, my medication has come to about 13,000 shillings so far. And then you have doctor's consultations, because this is not for free. And you know insurance companies have ditched us. So that comes to another anywhere between 15 and 30K. Okay? And then you have the cost of the so-called specialized additionals. So if your family is not in the habit of having, which my family is, but still the volume had to be increased, the bulk had to be increased of ginger, of honey, of lemon and everything. And then separate food or whatever you ask for. Although I must say, with my loss of sense of smell or taste and all of that, you don't even want to eat. You have to be forced and reminded to eat because you really don't want to eat. But look at the cost of your supplements, your zinc, your multivitamins, everything that everyone is telling you to take. They are giving you this long range of healthy available supplements, which will cost money. Then the hidden costs, rent, utilities, the fact that I have airtime or bundles or Wi-Fi, electricity, water. Because if you don't have those basic utilities, if you don't have indoor ablution, the neighborhood will not let you go and use the communal
facilities,
bathrooms because they think that COVID is like Ebola, or they think that it is like leprosy, or it's as shameful as syphilis or whatever it is. So it is very expensive to do your home-based care. By the time I come out, minus the running costs of rent and so on and so forth, you can be at tens of thousands of shillings. Who has that money? I can tell you for free, with my business having shut down because of COVID, because I'm in the hospitality business, and I'm not back up to speed, and I'm a consultant, a humanitarian and development consultant, and my work was regional, who's traveling and flying around the region. You can also understand that my income base has been vastly depleted.
True.
So every single shilling I'm spending on COVID treatment, home-based, actually I've been released into home-based care, is money that was meant for something else. And if push comes to shove, if I had to make a decision between buying my medication and making sure that my kids have something to eat, you can be sure what I would choose.
The choice is pretty obvious. Basically, what it sounds like is home-based care is just as expensive. Well, not just as expensive, let's be fair. It's still expensive. But, it's not as expensive as if you were in a hospital, because in a hospital, then you'd be paying for all those PPEs that everybody would be wearing just to attend to you. we have only removed that cost, but all the other associated costs are still there. I mean, it's still expensive to treat COVID-19 wherever you are, at home, in the hospital, wherever. It'll still cost you.
The question I want to ask is it expensive to treat COVID, or has it been made expensive?
It has been made expensive, CT. If you look at now what we have spent, the replication and the duplication of cost of PPEs because of the corruption.
Yep.
Jack Ma's donations disappearing in action. If you look at how much it has cost, ostensibly, the government to procure the equipment, the drugs, the testing, every single element of procurement, of support for COVID is riddled with some kind of irregularity and there's some kind of corruption. So why it is expensive is the opportunity cost of corruption has been landed on the taxpayer. So we are looking at treating someone in hospital to the tunes of tens of hundreds of thousands, even some people who ended up in ICU were in the millions.
Yep.
Why should it cost that much? Never mind the issue that private hospitals and what they charge, this is just immoral. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, CT, it should not cost that much to treat someone who has COVID. But people have come in, politically connected individuals, to capitalize and maximize on the money that seems to be flowing from an open tap to help Kenya deal with COVID. This is the last circle of Dante's Inferno. It is the worst form of criminality. I thought that Kenya had sank, and you know me in the energy sector, including every single thing that happens, how they steal from consumers. I thought we couldn't sink any lower. And look at what we are doing.
We've proved you wrong, haven't we?
I mean, is there another circle of hell?
I
that
suspect that being
can
Kenyan,
think
yes.
Oh, yes, there is.
I'm sure we'll come across one. Just when you think you've reached the nth, something else will come up which will make you ponder and say, why on earth did I think we'd reach the end of this?
And the cost keeps getting worse. You see, the worst part of it is those in government, if they fall sick, let's say when they fall sick, because we expect that people are going to fall sick. When they fall sick, they get treated. All these costs are basically our costs. It's not their cost.
Yeah.
So they don't feel the pinch. They don't feel the
They
pinch of, okay, so I was in hospital, I was in ICU for 4 days. I moved from ICU to HDU. I stayed in general ward. I still tested positive. 25 days down the road is when I was released. They don't think about how much it cost. But in reality, it costs to the tune of millions, which we as a taxpayer paid. And an ordinary person goes and gets admitted for the same duration of time, and no one to pay for them. And we still keep talking about we have a government, we have a state that is socially active and aware of the citizens. Madness, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, I wish every single Kenyan understood that the money that is being stolen with impunity is our money.
Yeah.
And if there was anything I could ever tell Kenyans, if there was somebody who wanted to run for leadership in this country, they should have 3 agendas only. Agenda number 1, corruption. Agenda number 2, corruption. Agenda number 3, corruption. And agenda 1, investigate thoroughly. Agenda number 2, prosecute. Agenda number 3, incarcerate, restitute. We want our money back. Let me tell you, there is nothing that will prosper in this country. Even when I'm looking at the county revenue allocation debates ongoing, you can debate until you find something equitable, and then the money is stolen. You can do anything you want to do. You can receive billions of shillings from IMF. You can go for as many Eurobonds as you like. You can receive bilateral, multilateral grants. You can do whatever you want to do. But so long as the architecture and the fabric of corruption has not been dealt with in Kenya conclusively, including the laws of lustration, which mean that anybody that is found having stolen public funds on any level, misappropriated, has a pending case, once they have done their restitution and they have returned what they stole, or they have been incarcerated, they can never run again for public office. Can you imagine what type of handful of people you'll have left now willing to stand for public office? So, my friends, we are what I call spitting in the wind, so long as we have not conclusively dealt with corruption. And it seems so ubiquitous. Corruption, just like cartels. Everyone says cartels, and everyone says accountability. It is also part of the strategy to numb us into a sense of disbelief that it is not possible to stamp out corruption
in this country. So, I mean, Cheryl, as we look at this and more people are getting to the point whereby, you know, like you said, and I think it was very poignant, as you say, that a lot of people are going to make the decision then to stay with it, as sick as they may get, because the other option on the other side is not anything that they would be able to afford, whether financially or socially, when it comes to taking care of families. Aren't we going to get to the point whereby a lot of people then would literally carry this illness as opposed to spending money and then hope they get better?
Yes, and this is how community spread is happening. It's a combination of people not wearing by choice or even by design. They just don't default. They don't have the money. Not wearing masks, not having the ability to socially distance. So we're being told socially distance, but you can't. So there's all of that. It's going to spread. It's going to be every single place that you look. And instead of the government looking at how to cushion and protect and ensure that communities, because you cannot eradicate slums in 2 months to make people ready for COVID. Slums are public policy failures and have been with us for decades, and you cannot build that Rome in a day. It will require a systematic rethinking of urban planning and cushioning of the population in a different way. So let us leave that process to one side. What do we need to do interim? The government, instead of looking at cash for families, allowing families to find ways of taking care of themselves. So many people have reached out to me and said, I want to send my family up country, and that's another debate. You're sending people up country to infect the older people and kill them. That's another debate. But somebody said, the safest place for my family right now is on my little plot up country, but I can't afford the fare to take them there. So when people do not have the means to organize their lives and find the safest possible ways that they can live through this thing called COVID, which will be with us, at least the socioeconomic ravages for the next 18 plus months. So long as the government is instead spending money buying body bags, saying, we have already given up, you're going to die, guys, and we're just waiting to put your bodies in bags. Instead of the government focusing on keeping people alive, they are focusing on the after effects of wide community spread and potentially people dying. But my physicians have said lots of interesting things about COVID, and they said for some reason, as Africans, we tend to be a little bit more resilient. It does not mean we are not catching it. It could have to do with our vitamin D absorption. It could have to do with a whole bunch of things. But we can only thank Providence that at this point in time, unlike Melinda Gates' prediction, you don't have bodies littering the streets and piling high up and everyone dying left, right, and center.
And we can only hope that it stays that way.
Yes, and most of us are asymptomatic. Maybe we have gone through so much. We have had malaria, we've had flus, who knows why it is that our bodies are a little bit more robust when
True.
it comes to the virus.
True.
And don't forget, I'm not a medic, so I'm not stating any medical facts here.
Chero,
but I'm just
thank
saying
you.
that there are these debates.
Indeed. Thank you very much,
Yes,
Titsei, for speaking to us, and we wish you all the best in this recovery. Now you're
Thank
saying
you
you're feeling
so much.
about 80%
I'm 80%
recovered.
there, but please, Eric, would you allow me just to encourage all Kenyans
Yes.
who have tested positive for COVID, do not be afraid. I came out in public, not because I like my private medical information out there, but because I believe we need to start talking about this. We need to be in the open. There should be no stigma attached to COVID. Anybody can catch COVID. And I would encourage everyone who is suffering, anxious, stressed, worried, alone in their homes. Reach out to me. You'll find me on Twitter. Send me a DM and say, I am stranded. I have so many people. I feel like a psychosocial counselor. I have so many people who have already reached out to me and told me their symptoms. Some people just want to talk. Kenya, don't hide and suffer in silence.
Good.
And middle class are big culprits also. They don't want to be seen to have someone in the household with COVID. In fact, the stigma lives a lot in the middle class. And I am calling
Indeed.
out the middle class to stop stigmatizing other people. We are the same ones who move around with impunity, who think we can afford hospital treatment. But when somebody catches it, the level of pariahdom that you're sent to is absolutely unacceptable. So I encourage Kenyans, don't hide, speak about it. Look for someone you trust. Look for me, even if you don't know me. Let us be open about it. We will all catch it. 3 of you there at one point or another will catch it.
Yeah.
And we cannot hide it. So I'm encouraging all Kenyans. I'm also saying pole sana to those who are still in hospital, struggling to recover. I'm also saying pole sana to the families of those who have loved ones who lost their lives to COVID.
Asante sana, Chero, and have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Have
Chero.
a good day, my friends.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much.
Be safe.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, let's take a look at what it looks like
Traffic.
now. Looking much better on Mombasa Road. I don't think we'll see much of an issue today. It's moving very smoothly and not much traffic in that area. Taking a look at Thika Road, however, it's slow. It's not too terrible. Not a bumper-to-bumper situation, but it should be fine as you then get into the CBD. All right, we're looking at the weather now and how this is affecting traffic. The fog is quite low outside of the NMA as you head towards Naivasha, head towards Nakuru. So everybody, and still even at 8 o'clock with the sun peeking through a little bit, but that means that traffic will be affected. So take it easy there as much as you can because visibility is low. It looks like it will not be a crazy traffic day today, but we're keeping our eyes open in case anything does change. Don't forget, you can also let us know what you see. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's keep moving as painless as possible this Friday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
Conversation
day.
continues right here on Spice FM Broadcasting, Nairobi 94.4, Malindi 97.7, Njeri 90.9, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, 102.5 Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter is Spice FM KE. The conversation now moves into still looking at this COVID-19 times. We still use that phrase. In these COVID-19 times, a lot has happened. Just Chero herself has given us her own testimony of what is happening in terms of her livelihoods. She runs a business. That business has been severely impacted by COVID-19. She's a consultant. Consultants required travel. A lot of that now is no longer possible, so it's not happening. So incomes dwindled. There are those that have directly lost their jobs. And even the story today is saying, expect, just from the conversation that we had yesterday with the chairperson of the Pubs and Restaurants Association, this story here says you could soon say bye-bye to your favorite joint or your favorite drink. Very many of these businesses that have shut down now are likely never to reopen.
Are you suggesting, Eric, that the real struggle we're having here is with change? Because the reality of COVID is staring at us in the face and becoming more visible with every passing day. And yet the debate still rages. You still hear people asking whether it's true or not. But more importantly, because of COVID, there are certain things that are facing us again. Lack of employment, reduced incomes, health issues, cost issues. These are realities. Now, is it that people are slow to adjust and unwilling to adjust? Or is it just that people are just generally overwhelmed?
Well, I think it's a combination of these factors when we look at what's going on. Because, this is the way of life that people have been used to for the odd 10, 15, 20 years, depending on when you entered into a job market, for example. And then now being asked to change that or bring things completely on their head. So, yes, I think there's an overwhelming factor that plays here. There's the fact that change, nobody really likes change. Even if it's even when change is for the better, people are going to take a minute to be able to adjust to it. So we're looking at unprecedented, whereby everything that you were used to, then you're asking to change. The way in which you live, the way in which you operate with other people, the way in which you educate your children, the way in which you work, the way in which you socialize with people, that has to change.
But also you've got to remember that human beings are by nature very resilient. I mean, you'll look at that. There's a reason why we have words. We have a word like adapt in every language, however you look at it, whether it's a word or a sentence, but there's adapt. Because something has happened and now you need to shift gears and pivot into something else. This is what is expected. The reality of the COVID situation is that it was sudden. So suddenly this is what you were doing. You'd already carved a niche for yourself. You'd already started on this journey. You were making a living from this. Suddenly, it has come to an end, an abrupt end. And it'll take some time for some people, to pivot and move into something else. Others, it may be faster because maybe they were already prepared with such kind of livelihood where they live today, you do this, it doesn't work, tomorrow you can quickly move into the other. Others, you've gotten into a comfort zone. And now moving from that comfort zone and thinking, so what can I do now that will continue to earn me a living? It's taking long. So I guess it's a reality of all those things that we're talking about. So let's talk what could then happen in terms of life after this COVID-19, life after layoffs. Pick yourself up, dust up, and find yourself. Joined on the line now is by leadership coach Pamela Rita Munyi. Pamela runs consultancy and training on leadership and on people, looking at new opportunities. Pamela, thank you very much for speaking to us. Good morning. She's not able to hear us, so John, just get her back on the line. So Pamela is going to be talking to us about, what is it that you can do to pivot yourself, to move from here to the next stage in life, to do what you're thinking that this is it. Life has given me all these lemons.
Well, and then you're looking at things like the new normal, and everybody says the new normal. And it sounds like a buzzword that goes along with COVID, but actually is the reality that certain things have to change. How are we then going to be able to adapt with this? You lost your job, and perhaps now you need to look at the option of, using whatever little resources that you have to start a business, for example, to be able to get by, or apply for a new job, or start to look at ways in which you can basically survive. It really does call for that. How do you begin? How do you start to now say, all right, this is the change that I need to make, and this is the manner in which I'm going to do it? Job losses have taken place. There have been cuts. There have been salary cuts. How do you now begin to deal with your new budget, whereby you had planned for a very long time, for a year, as it were. How then do you go about that? So I think it's very important to be able to look at some of these, and it goes across board. Whether you're earning a very little amount, whether you were earning a very large amount, and then that has suddenly changed. Life is changing, and it has changed in a very short period of time. Nobody was given warning that this was coming.
Yeah.
So you didn't have time to adequately prepare for the rain, as it were. It was something that you met as you were going. So then you have to readjust, turn the wheels, and start. The question is, how do you do that when all these other things are not taking a break?
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy one, because I mean, you're not being given an opportunity to adjust. You still
you have to go with it.
You have your bills to pay. You have your family to feed today. You have your rent to pay at the end of this month. Everything else is continuing. The only thing is that your source has dried up. So what is it that you do to adjust to this? Pamela Rita is joining us now on the line. Pamela Rita Munye is a leadership coach. Good morning, Pamela.
Good morning, Eric.
And thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Karibu, welcome to the Situation Room.
It's my pleasure.
So we have just introduced the topic, Pamela, and looking at COVID-19, the impact that COVID-19 has had on very many people. People have completely lost livelihoods. Others have had their sources of income severely affected, dwindled maybe to an extent of even from 100% to 10% in some cases. And now we want to have a conversation on what are the opportunities? What do we do when you find yourself in such a situation?
Okay. One of the first things that happens, Eric, is the loss of a job is just like the loss of maybe a loved one. And the first thing that happens is when people lose a source of income, there's a lot of denial. And just the phases of grief. The first thing is people are the denial. People are struggling to accept what's going on, and then of course there's anger, and then bargaining, and then there's the aspect of depression, and then we get to acceptance. So the first thing I'd like to say is that when you lose a source of income or when you lose a job, it's very important to accept that it has actually happened. Because once you accept, then you're able now to just move on and begin to think of what to do. So the first thing, Eric, is really acceptance. It's important for people to accept that the loss is there, the job is gone, and the source of income is there. Yeah.
Pamela, this looks. I think this is if anybody could say, it's a very different situation whereby a loss of a loved one, for example, whereby you have to go through the different stages of grief and acceptance and all of this, but nothing is waiting for you to go through the process when it comes to losing your job, for example, in COVID. Nobody's giving you time to sit down and accept and grieve and whatever. There are children who are waiting for you to feed tomorrow. There is food that's being waited to be looked for example. There's a landlord who's waiting for their rent. So you don't really have the time. You got to go. So whether you accept it or not is a reality that slaps you in the face, a good one, as they would say, and you have to get up and go. So do you have time for this process when things need to be done?
You may actually not have time for the process and to go through, but those are the things, the motions that you go through, even as whatever is going on. So the first thing I'd like to say is personally, by the way, I know what it feels to actually lose a job and lose a source of income without notice. I mean, most of the people who've lost work, many have not even had notice. You know that you're given notice 21 days or 30 days or 40 days. So the first thing that I'd like to say is really the support systems really is something that people really must find. And just like you're saying, there's no time to even think through. So the first thing is, what is the support system that is around the person who has lost a job? Let me even personalize it. What is my support system? Just like you said, I need food on the table. I need to pay my rent. I need to pay, the basics. So the first thing is the support system. Is it family? Is it friends? Because that's where it begins. Because like you said, there are things that have to be done. So the person needs to find the support system.
who can help me through this? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it savings? One of the things I've noticed in the last 4 months, there were news that Kenyans have actually lost, their savings have run out. So even the place of savings is actually an issue. So the first thing is get a support system and people who can assist you in terms of having something to eat, meeting rent and things like that. It's very important is looking within yourself and asking yourself, I do not have a job that I go to every single day. So what is that I have within me that is a gift or an ability or a talent that I can begin to turn around so that I can be able to bring something on the table? One of the things that you can never go wrong with is food. So probably if you have maybe you know how to make a meal or something or a pastry or something like that, that's something you can pick up. But it's very important to actually just sit down and ask yourself, what are my gifts? What are my abilities? What are those things that I can do without spending money? And how can I turn those things around so that they can actually be able to be traded with and so that I can be able to do something?
Would you say that Kenyans are the sort of people who actually plan for the future and plan for things that are unforeseen? Or do you think that we have an employment mentality where we think that when you have a job, it's there for life, so you're always going to be caught unawares?
One of the challenges we have in this country is lifestyle. We have people who have jobs and who earn a source of income, but when you look at the way they spend that money is actually something to be very worried about. Most of the middle class have jobs, but when you look at how able they are, how they save, if you look at their savings, it's quite really on the minimal side. So I think for me, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is we have quite too many people who are too stuck up on jobs. There are people who feel that if I don't have a job, I cannot survive. And yet, each and every one of us has a gift, an ability, a talent that if we took a little bit more time and became a little bit more entrepreneurial, we'll be able to survive much more easy. Because the jobs, like you just said, they are not easy to come by. And now we are having a lot of job loss. So we need to...
Are you saying that Kenyans are not entrepreneurial? I would have thought the opposite is what is actually true. Kenyans are really very entrepreneurial.
Kenyans are entrepreneurial. They've embraced entrepreneurship, but I'm now actually talking about the people who have lost work. People who are in situations where they have never tried an entrepreneurial venture. They have never thought about it, but they are at home. There's no work. There's no income. The support system is dwindling. I've had people say the minute you lose work and you begin to make calls, even to friends and family, people don't pick up because they are thinking, oh my goodness, this is a call asking for help or asking for assistance. So I'm not saying that people are not entrepreneurial. I'm actually talking about the people who have most recently lost a source of income and people who are so hung up on getting a salary at the end of the month. Actually, those are the ones that we need to really talk to and insist that they should embrace.
My discussion is actually, you see, what you are saying, I understand and I appreciate, but what I'm saying is, how do you get people to understand that what you are now discussing is an eventuality that can happen to them? Because you talk about saving. If someone is part of an insurance scheme, it is a saving, but with also a rider of a safety net. If employers have an understanding of what could happen in the future or not, they ought to have schemes that would enable their employee, even if the job comes to an end or the business comes to an end. So it's not on them, it is on a body that deals with such things to ensure that this person's life or livelihood is actually looked after. I'm talking about changing the way we look at the way we plan our lives. Because if we think differently about planning, then the discussion we're having will be there, but not in such great measure.
I'd like to actually bring something personal that we have gone through. I hear you. There are some employers who are actually very sensitive about the situation, but there are some employers who are not. And so when you look at it, yes, it's possible to plan for a situation like this. But what happens when the situation comes around and you actually are able to pick on what you had planned and put aside for, but then by and by it dwindles and it goes off. How do you handle that? And as I speak to you, there are many people who are listening to us who now do not have that soft spot to land. If it is savings, the savings have run out. If it is the support system, it's not there anymore. So I think those are the people we really need to talk to and say, so what you are focusing on is not there any longer. What do you have within yourself?
So
that
essentially,
you can actually stand up?
Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is that there's a striving, or there should be an encouragement, and I'm asking this question, to get people to be inward looking for solutions. Because if we look at other economies, for example, there was quite a high amount of support that came from the government of the day, as it would be. If you lost your job or if you got a cut, you could depend on your government to actually do something for you. And that's documented. It's true. It has happened. And there was even a second a turnaround of some things. The United States, for example, where they were giving people, upwards of $1,000 for the duration of this COVID difficulty. That happened. It's true. So essentially what we're saying in this neck of the woods is to say people must be inward looking for solutions that would help you through this.
Yeah, actually that is it. And another thing that is very important that I'd like to say is that whenever you get something to do, if somebody employs you, whether it's a job or whether you have an entrepreneurial venture, you need to always ask yourself, what happens the day that this is removed and it's not there? What happens the day that this source of income is not there? So inward looking is very important. And there's something I'd like to say that I've also observed, especially in other places and other economies. There's a lot of encouragement, even in the education system, for people to pick up on what causes them, what drives them. There are things that we take for granted that could be hobbies or could be talents or things we do without a lot of training. But those things could actually save you on a rainy day, on a day when you do not have a formal employment. Yeah.
But I think this conversation then brings various angles to it. There is the first one where in ordinary times when the sun is shining, what do you do with that, in terms of now creating that savings culture? And I agree with you, CT. I think in this country, our savings culture is put to question. Although others could argue, if you look at the proliferation of SACCOs, that is a saving culture that is right there. That it shows itself that people actually are members of SACCOs, so they are putting money aside for saving, and they know that this is also a pool that I can get into if I wanted to invest into something where I can get a loan and use my networks as co-guarantors. So that can go as a counter argument to what I'm raising here, our savings culture. Then the other one is the entrepreneurial culture, where this is the other thing that is known in this country. Everybody has a side hustle. Whether they talk about it openly or they don't, somebody's always thinking of what else I can do. And they call it a side hustle, where, like you're saying, Pamela, maybe it's a hobby and you do something to make a living out, 1 or 2 shillings out of it. Very many of those side hustles also get impacted at the same time as you've lost your job. So right now, there are people who had formal employment. They were also running some side hustles. Maybe they were running some entertainment joints, some food joints, some there were DJs somewhere. Those have gone.
Eric, according to the Kenyan Yearbook 2018, the percentage of Kenyans, they're talking about 20 million adults, all right? 22% are served by commercial banks, microfinance institutions, while 17.6% are served by SACCOs. The people who join these SACCOs and who form the body of individuals who are in this sort of scheme, and we haven't thrown in insurance, are not a large number. Even if you do the maths, even if you add the banks, and then you add the SACCOs, we barely get to 40%, meaning the majority are not served by this. Why am I mentioning this? Can I give an example? Please, carry on.
Okay. One of the things that I think Kenyans need to learn, COVID-19 pandemic has come around, and it's going to really help us to just do things a little bit different. We have observed that we do not have a saving culture in this country. And I can tell you for a fact that is true. So what is it that can be done? What multi-sectoral approach can be done so that we begin to actually encourage Kenyans to save? 3 years ago, my contract expired at a place that I was working. And what happened is that you had to leave. And it was many of us, and we were at the top of our career. You know, we thought that actually the contract was going to be renewed, but that did not happen. Now, the first thing that happens is that you actually get hit by this realization. And one of the things that is happening in Kenya now, especially for the people who are quite educated and exposed, people who are middle-level career, you realize that once you lose a job, it's very difficult to get another. So the first thing that hits you is that how are you going to survive for the next 6 months or for the next 1 year, depending on what route you will take. Even as we have this conversation about gifts and hobbies and things like that, there's a period.
Why did you think your contract would be renewed?
Pardon?
Why did you think that your contract would be renewed? You knew it was a 3-year contract, it came to an end. What made you think, or what made you hope, or what made you hanker your plans on the renewal of this contract?
Oh, performance, and that's what everybody thinks. It's going to get you a job at the same time. But you know, they are dynamics. That is what I've realized. There are different dynamics. You may actually think that you're performing well. You may actually think that you're doing the best for your employer. But then a dynamic comes along and you realize things did not go as planned. And that's when I realized you should always have a plan. You should always be ready for the worst. And that's one thing that we need to encourage, especially the young people. I'm talking about the young entrepreneurs, people who are in the middle of their career. Should always be ready for the worst.
You know, my experience has been slightly different from yours because I worked for a government parastatal. And there was a very stark difference between people who were employed on contract and those who were permanent and pensionable. Literally everyone who was on contract, who were the minority, had a plot, were building, had built, and moved into a half-finished house. Whereas those who were permanently employed had cars, they were renting houses. And I saw this as very interesting because even the conversation around it, and those who were on contract were always fighting to finish their project before the term of the contract came to an end. Those who were permanently employed, I never saw them struggling.
It's permanence.
I never saw them moving in that direction. They'd change cars, change residential places where they paid rent. But I never saw them with the same energy of trying to do things, personal things for themselves. So if I were to talk about the problems that we have, I would argue that perhaps we should stop these permanent and pensionable jobs. Stop.
So everybody just lives in a...
You have a contract, so you work.
There's insecurity.
You don't have like this
Safety. It motivates
imaginary
you.
safety net.
Yes, false.
Because it's false safety net, so that it motivates you to actually
It was
have
true
something
once
else
upon
to
a
fall
time
back
where
on.
you could work for 30, 40 years continuously.
And you were sure.
Maybe down the job, etc., etc. But now this isn't the reality. Stop the permanent and pensionable jobs. Let someone know that in 3 years, I will not have a job.
So still enough.
And watch how they utilize the resources they have for those 3 years.
Still as much as possible. This is what happens with the politicians because they also know it's a 5-year tenure where you may not come back.
Eric, you had to choose the worst case scenario, isn't it? Huh?
Yes.
And the worst possible example you could give.
Oh, yes. See a way you can pilfer.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking more of how do we create a culture where the young people, we know that our population, we are 65% of young people, that is people who are between 15 and 35. How do we create a culture where we embrace entrepreneurship and people actually have that kind of mindset that you've just discussed, that people are not, so stuck up on working for the longest time, whether it's permanent and pensionable or whether it's a contract. What can we do so that we bring that kind of culture where people are entrepreneurial in thinking, where people save a little bit more than they spend? How do we do that? Because
what can we do?
There's lots we can do.
What can we do? I mean, from where you're sitting, Pamela, what can we do? Because I think a lot of people are sitting in that moment when they're in that would-be despair and asking the same question. And I think we're at the point whereby we need to, as quickly as COVID came and overturned everything, then we need to churn out those solutions, in terms of ideas, just as quickly as COVID came.
As we take a break and come back, I have an argument against this whole thing of pushing everybody to have an entrepreneurial mindset. I think that may be counterproductive in the long run, because now you've hired somebody and somebody's just sitting there. 70% of their mind is not on the job that you've employed them to do. They are thinking of their side hustle. They're thinking of, I have overstayed in this employment. That has a counter to, it's counterproductive to everything that we're hoping to do. 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a quick break, take a look at the weather and traffic, and then we continue the conversation with Pamela. And Pamela is a leadership coach. We are talking about these COVID times. People have lost their jobs. When you coming out of these layoffs, what is it that we can do? What are the opportunities that present themselves in the society? Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
You are tuned in to Nairobi's #1 soul station, Spice FM.
All right, we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in some parts of Nairobi today. That'll change as we go through, and there's a chance of rain later on, but we're looking at it holding steady at 15 degrees or so and just partly cloudy conditions. All right, looking into Njeri, we're at 18 degrees. We'll see partly cloudy conditions for most of the day. And in Nakuru, at 15 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for most of the day as well. All right, taking a look then into Eldoret, where at 15 degrees, partly cloudy conditions as well. Chances of rain going into the weekend. Kisumu at 21 degrees, partly cloudy as well, and a chance of rain here. Kakamega at 15, partly cloudy conditions. And then at 18 degrees and partly cloudy conditions. We're looking into Kampala. We're at 18 degrees and partly cloudy conditions. We'll see highs then of 25 and lows of 17. In Dar es Salaam, a warm day where we're seeing highs of 31. And in Johannesburg, highs of 18 and coming down to a cool low of 4. And in Lagos for now, 24 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 25.
Mellow Spice.
All right, still looking really good everywhere we're looking at it today. Moving very well on Mombasa Road. Let's hope it remains this way for most parts of today. Coming off of Thika Road, into the CBD as well, not much of a problem. Honestly, today has been a really good day. I actually don't even know what to say, but well done. Or I guess as well, things that we would normally do on a Friday are not being practiced today. Any hot spots, trouble spots, let us know what you see. Remember, getting out of the city, out of the NMA, is where we'll have a little bit of a hold up because visibility is low. The fog is still quite low for 8:30, but it just means that you need to go a little bit slower. I hope that doesn't affect traffic in any way, shape or form. Into the CBD, coming off of Uhuru Highway as we come back into the NMA. It's very slow, but it's moving, so it's not a bumper-to-bumper situation. Things are moving, and we're happy for that. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us in case you need to.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The conversation continues at 25 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. On the line with us is Pamela Rita, and she is basically just giving us her experience and what she does. She's a leadership coach. She's taking us through, what this kind of thinking, the new way of thinking. COVID-19 times, people have basically lost incomes, and you're thinking, what do I need to do to stay afloat? City, you were raising the issue of, first of all, let's think about the before, as you're getting into employment. Think about the day that this can come to an end, because this is it's reality.
It is a reality, but if you consider, for instance, countries that are known for their innovations, all this process of innovation doesn't begin when people are adults. It begins in their schools. That's where you actually inculcate the mind into focusing in a certain area or taking certain directions.
Yeah.
But if you remember from independence, the songs that we had that encouraged people to go to school told them that after you had finished your education, you'll get a very good job.
Yes.
That was how the songs went. Now, that narrative, I think, is what is being discussed and how it needs to change. But if it is not part and parcel of the education system and the older narrative of get an education so that you can seek employment, should be get an education, you can get employment, but you also have a brain that you can use to also be entrepreneurial. Yes. You can be an employer in due course. That thinking is something that has to be taught. Assuming that people will look and imbue it, yes, it happens. If you come from a community that is very predominantly business-like, you will learn by the examples you see around you.
Yeah.
Now, what if you have the ability to be business-like, but you do not have that example? How do you go about even beginning to think along those lines?
You wouldn't. You'd be stuck on what you see.
On what you see
Well, I
and
mean,
what
the
everybody
narrative
around
that-
you does.
Which is
The
everybody
narrative that
becomes
has
a
been peddled.
police officer.
Yes, exactly.
Well, sure, the narrative
or
that has
joins
been,
the army.
the narrative
Yes.
that has been peddled is that you're going to school to get an education that will then enable you to get a job. It's not that you would have to think out of the box to do something that would then give you any kind of added income. So I guess, Pamela, a question would be then not necessarily what do people do in terms of businesses, but then how then do you shift your mind to look at the different options that are available without necessarily taking your mind off any kind of employment that you would have?
Not even available. How do you create those opportunities? Yesterday, we talked with one Mr. Nicholas Ngang, and he talked about gaps. In every situation, when Pamela talked about going into selling, doing, yes, that's seeing a gap, realizing that, wait a moment, this is not being done. That's a gap. It exists.
Yeah.
But your mind has to be geared in that direction. Now, she's right when she says COVID has pushed us to think beyond that. But how do we actualize it?
How do we actualize this, Pamela?
I like that question. I think one of the things that has come up is the education system. But I also want to say it is very important for all of us to approach life with the knowledge that we are all gifted in a particular way. I'm sure you've had people talking about, this is what I do, I love to do it, and I get paid for it. I'm sure you've had that narrative, yeah? Now, we need to get to that place where people actually look at life in light of what they are wired for and what they are good at. That is very important. I like what Eric said. How do you then move people away from their jobs because you're encouraging them to think entrepreneurial? Not really. People can still do what they do and they can be good at what they do, but they need to be sure that that is what they are wired for in terms of their gifts and their abilities and their talents. Now, as much as we begin, even in the school setup, we also need to bring this conversation home. How do we view the children that we are raising? Do we encourage them to go to school and work hard and get a job? Or are we concerned in finding out what is the gift of this child? What is this they do and they enjoy doing it?
Yeah.
How can I wire the education that I offer to this child so that whatever they are doing is actually preparing them to be an expert in that field? So that they are excited about what they do. They also want to, do it so that they can impact society, not just for the money also, but just for the purpose and for changing lives. I'd like to take this conversation to some of the people who have actually come up with innovations that have gotten them to make a lot of money, but those innovations have also transformed society. What happened? They were trying to answer to a need. They were actually doing this because they loved to do it, and they were solving a problem in society. You get? So one of the things that I've also realized is that I think sometimes we are too, focused on what am I going to get out of this, as opposed to what solution am I bringing to society. Those are some of the conversations we should have. So there's the education system we need to look at. There's the home front, where we need to begin to have those conversations where children are actually raised in a particular way. And then there's this grown-ups, people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who've lost jobs. Where do they go and seek help? We need to have avenues where they can be able to seek help. and where they can be able to actually get people to change their thinking.
What would these avenues look like? These avenues that they could go to for help?
These avenues look like making sure that coaching and mentoring is available. And these are people who don't have money. So you cannot actually begin to tell them to go to a coaching firm and pay some money. What can the government do? What is the government doing to actually create, opportunities where these people can be helped? How NGOs and, people who want to help, how do we create avenues where we can come up with support groups? How we can be able to help people think differently, in terms of the situation they are in. Because like I said at the beginning, even though you did not agree with me, that, a lot, you go through a process. And one of the things we need to help people at home do, we need to begin to encourage them to think differently. Yes, you do not have a job. Yes, you do not have a source of income. It is not the end of the world. There's hope.
I like that idea of the support. It's a social, it's called what? Psychosocial support that should be well structured within the community. In addition to doing kazi mtaani and bringing all these youth and telling them go and collect garbage, what else would the government be doing in terms of bringing them together and giving them a new avenue of thinking, sharing your ideas? Because as people sit and they brainstorm, somebody will come up with an idea and others can fall into that and support that idea, and it generates something fresh and something new. What we are seeing now, even when you see people moving from employment and going into, we saw yesterday a story that was covered in the Standard, where it was a teacher who had been employed by a BOM, a certain school, has now moved into selling mandazi. You see, there are people who are individually just getting up and thinking, I've got to do something, with no support at all from any structured support. It's just being pushed to a corner and adapting. But we need that kind of support within the community. How do we put together that kind of support, though?
I think this is something that should be well thought out. It should not be something that, that is some politician comes up and wants to do something to gain, to gain whatever mileage. It's something that can only work if it is multi-sectorally approached. And what I mean by that is that we've already realized that government cannot solve all our problems. The role of government is actually to create environments where the community and society can thrive. So how do we...
You're letting the government get away with too much here. They're actually supposed to solve very many of our problems. Don't give the government this advisory role. They'll take it up very, very quickly. They're not advisors. They're actually supposed to do certain things.
Yes, but the truth of the matter is the solutions are also out there. How do we bring in the private sector? How do we bring in government to the same table? How do we bring in NGOs? How do we bring in media? How do we actually come up with a support system that will last? That is not just a COVID-19 response. It is something that we begin to do going forward for generations to come.
That is the job of the government. And that's what I agree with CT. That is the job of the government, to bring in together all those, create the structure and then bring the support system, the NGOs, the private sector, the youth groups, the churches and religious organizations. And that's why we had the social halls, for example. That's a purpose that social halls would serve.
Yes.
Serving the community, where you can have this conversation. You can say, on Wednesdays in the evening, we are discussing with the youth on job opportunities or career choices or, all those kind of things. If a government does not do that, if a government sees a social hall and sees it's a place where it will only be doing political rallies, or it can give a politician that piece of land, then a government has failed. And we are in that position because our government has never thought about, it does, but it does not actualize the thinking.
You do have a point. Look, we have an entire ministry that deals with the planning.
Yeah.
What on earth do they plan? Because I would assume that the biggest resource we have is the human resource, isn't it?
Yep.
We are being told that there's a cadre of people within a certain age bracket who should be exiting the workforce within the government. Who is the biggest employer?
Yeah.
Do you hear of a plan? The president began something nice, but it was tokenism, if you ask me.
The internship program.
Yes, employing. Now, can we increase those numbers so that these young people start learning how to work within government at an early age and in large numbers?
Or even structured in a better way, such that people who are getting into these internships come out and there are stories that we can see, we can hear their experiences. That encourages more youth to want to go into government, an internship.
Another thing we need to bring to the fore is encourage employers to always have an exit strategy for their staff.
Should we
As much as
encourage
we
them or
want-
should we force them?
I think it should be in policy. That would be great.
Yep.
Because as much as we are saying these jobs are not going to be there all the time, like you're saying, somebody talked about the government exiting people. We're actually going to have a crisis. I'm telling you, in the next 5 years, because we have a lot of people who need to exit government. What are the plans that are being put in place to ensure that those people are prepared to leave? Have you heard of people dying immediately after retirement? Because they cannot handle
many.
their
Because
life
they don't have anything to hold on to.
Yeah.
Yes, we have, and we've also had quite a number of. I don't know whether you're aware of the suicide rates. There are people who are committing suicide because they've lost work.
Yeah.
So, what can employers do in terms of an exit strategy? The minute you're employed, the way we have the orientation program, there should also be an exit strategy that is put in place so that people are always ready and prepared to actually exit.
Pamela,
Because
many
it's
employers have a department called human resource.
Yeah.
That department, I believe, should be taking care of the very things that you're saying. Or do they think their job is simply to employ people and sack them or get rid of them?
The fact of the matter is the human resource department exists, but I don't think they're functional in this issue I'm discussing. The other day, about a week ago, I had a conversation with a lawyer friend who works with unemployment matters. She told me that she has handled so much, cases of exit. And every time she has a meeting with those people, she can see the depression. She can see the stress. People are not ready to leave, regardless of how big a package you give them, because it is something that they are not wired.
No, you don't prepare them to take the news.
Yeah.
That really is the issue. Because why do you think I'm talking of contracts? If you know there's a 3-year contract, don't you think that even by the second year, you should start telling people in 2 years' time? Case in point, when we were getting the new notes, look at what the central bank did. Perfect example. By the time we're receiving the notes, man, there's no one who can say they had not been informed or educated about the notes. They did not leave
Or
any
what
stone
you had
unturned.
to do with the
No,
old ones,
they
for
did
example, right?
So, an example has been set by a government institution. Are you telling me that people who are trained to deal with human beings within a workplace cannot come up with a scheme to ensure that information is given in a timely manner? There will always be people who, irrespective of how timely it is, react badly.
Yeah.
But the vast majority will have been prepared. The very things that you're talking about, Pamela, will then be infused into this discussion so they start planning and knowing what to do long before that fateful day arrives.
And it's not a matter of policy or law, because the policy and law are already there. When you want to declare redundancies, there is a certain timeline. You cannot just wake up today and declare redundancies tomorrow and fire people. There's at least a month. There are
warnings.
warnings
There
and
are-
everything. So on paper, these things are there. It's now ensuring that the relevant departments do that. And if it doesn't start from the biggest employer, that's the government, then the private sector is not going to be looking up to anyone.
I'm still at that point, though, Pamela, whereby, we can talk about things and how they should be and how it would be great if this and the other thing were happening. But the reality of the day is that it's clear that there are certain things that are not happening, right? In terms of that buffer, right now, it doesn't exist. If we're just going to look at government, for example. So I'm still at that point where there are a number of people, and we're not just talking about young people here, middle-aged, older people who right now in this space are looking for an answer, are looking for an option, are looking for advice then in terms of what to do. Because although the change that came about as a result of COVID was quick, the effects are almost permanent. So what really, I'm still at that point of what needs to happen
Practically
practically now.
Yeah, and I really wanted us to get there because there are people also listening who are in that category. I think the first thing I said, to be as realistic as I can, is everybody who is in this situation needs to identify a support system. Because whatever we are discussing about discovering gifts, abilities, or strengths will take time. And by the time you come up with a business idea, whatever it is that is going to bring you money, whether you want to sell masks, I know people have been selling masks, vegetables, whatever it is. The first thing you need is identify a support system in your life. What works for you? Is it your family members who can support you? Is it friends? Is it the church? Is it the government? Whatever it is, you need a support system because you need to survive. The second thing that once you've identified the support system is you need to begin to think and quickly. And that's why I'm saying you need to accept very quickly, go through the emotions, whatever it is, and accept and begin to ask yourself, now I have a support system. I'm not sure how long it will last. What am I going to do from 15th of August when this support system is not in place? So the second thing is find something you can do. Eric, everybody has a gift, has an ability. Everybody knows something that someone else doesn't. How can you pick that up? How do you identify it? How do you refine it? How do you turn it into a relevant need? Because you need something to come to, whether it's coins, notes, something needs to come forth so that you can be able to survive. And then once you've identified whatever it is, then you need to ask yourself, how do you market it? How do you trade it? And then how to place yourself strategically so that you can now begin to develop yourself so that you can be able to recover.
But Pamela, shouldn't you add a rider and simply state that whatever these talents are, they must be legally expressed?
Yes, absolutely. It's got to be something that is needed by the society. There's got to be a need for it, and it's got to be something authentic and legal. Absolutely.
And lawful. But also, it has also got to be peppered with the reality that whatever idea you have, whatever you're thinking the society needs as a solution, may not immediately work. Because you see, there's that reality that I'll come up with a brilliant idea, doing masks, and then I get into the market and realize I was not the only one with that idea. Or that it may not necessarily catch on immediately. So how do you build in that resilience in this time?
The honors are on everybody to get it to work. I think it's a stretching time. It's a difficult situation, but you need to be hopeful. That is very important. You need to be focused on the end. What is the end of this? And that focus gives you hope and keeps you going. I just really want to retaliate that aspect of support groups. I know many people think it's an American concept or European concept, but it helps when you actually get together and talk with people. One of the things that we did when we lost work, and we are quite a huge number of us, we actually created support groups. We have WhatsApp groups. We talk every once in a while. And anything that we do, we support each other. If someone is selling masks, we all buy masks from that person. If someone is selling vegetables, we all buy vegetables from that person. So I think it's important to also realize you cannot live life in a vacuum. You will be feeling very bad about yourself. Some people even want to save face. They don't want to go out or anything. But you need to get together with some people. You need to have a community around you so that you can be able to recover.
Do you think that we can? Because one of the things that even as we wrap this up, one of the things that we're dealing with is that it's not just one sector of people who are suffering here. Across board, people who used to earn a daily wage, those who earn a monthly wage, those who were able to do fantastically in business. So we're looking across board. So we could be very optimistic, which we are encouraged to do, but do you see that everybody, or at least most people, can bounce back from this and perhaps find a silver lining in this cloud?
I think one of the things that even government will realize by the end of the year, there'll be much more entrepreneurial ventures coming to the fore. People will recover. I have no doubt about it. It's going to be difficult, and that is why it is important to stay positive, to remember that God is in this and it's something you're going to go through for a short while. And that's why it's important to have support groups and things like that. But it is a situation that is going to blow over. It's going to blow over. It may not feel like that. I know exactly how it feels. I've been there. But you have to actually wake up every day and believe that it's going to get better. And then another thing I'd like to say, which is very important, you cannot afford to have a void mind. You must do something. Don't just sit there. Read a book. Do something. There's got to be something you must do. Because the minute you stay there and your mind is empty, oh my goodness, there's so much you're going to get yourself into, which may be negative. Things like addictions and things like that. You need to just make sure you're doing something, have accountability partners, so that you can make sure that you're keeping it positive.
So
But
get
I'd
up,
just like
get
to
up and
say
stay
it's
active.
a flow over. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for speaking to us today. Pamela Rita Munyi is a leadership coach, giving us experiences, and it's actually very good, Pamela, that you've used this conversation to also share from your personal experience, something that you've gone through. When you're talking about support systems, you've seen the support systems working for you, and also that resilience. We hope that all of us who are listening today, pick up a lesson from this. And sometimes we talk as if it's somebody else's lesson. Eh?
It's right here.
It's somebody else's lesson to learn. But it's all of us to learn from this. And asante sana, Pamela, for this one. We wish you a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
This conversation continues on Spice FM, the social media handles, Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. City, you're something on your mind.
This is something that actually has to be addressed seriously, because the mindset that people have with regards to employment has been so cemented, in fact, into our being, that getting people to actually look for alternatives, it's a task. I mean, think, how often do people come to you to ask you to help them find a job? It's the norm.
Yeah, it is.
There's that rare occasion when you find someone telling you they want to start a business.
Yeah.
And when you ask them to explain it, even if you're not a business person, this one will not work. Because he's joining a business that 10 other people are in, and probably 10 other people are struggling in. And this one, so I was pensive because there's an entire discussion and thought process that needs to go into finding a possible way out of this situation that we're in. And Pamela is right in this sense. COVID, because of its extreme measures, may give us that opportunity to actually think extremely also.
To start going that
Yes.
direction. Indeed. Well, this conversation continues, like we say, on all our digital platforms. In the next hour, we change the conversation once again. We have been celebrating it's a World Breastfeeding Week, was it?
Yes.
World Breastfeeding
Week. Yes. It ends today. Started on Saturday.
All right.
apparently.
All right. So we'll look into what does that mean and why is it an important aspect to be celebrated around the world and what conversations were happening throughout the week. But as we come to the top of the hour, CT Muga, remind us today's proverb.
God is good, but never dance with a lion. This is a Zimbabwean saying. Yes.
God is good, but never dance with a lion.
Don't push your luck.
Sitting there, but we know about God. You're on your own.
Yes, you are looking at the lion thinking, nice pussycat. The lion is thinking, nice dietary plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lunch.
So, yes, men do also have a critical role to play in breastfeeding. Actually, this is an opinion piece written today by a communications lecturer and trainer at KU, Dr. Kalangi Kiambati. We'll be discussing breastfeeding for quite a while in the next hour. Good morning, 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All right,
Traffic.
so it's a good day because traffic on Mombasa Road is actually performing very well. Not much of an issue. You don't get to Nyayo Stadium roundabout with any headaches whatsoever. So traffic on this Friday is looking very, very good. And in other parts as well, Ngong Road, Langata Road, coming out of Westlands, coming out of Thika Road for today. But that will change tomorrow because the Kenya Urban Roads Authority has issued a notice that part of the Thika Superhighway will be closed for Saturday and Sunday to allow for certain works to take place. So plan your trips accordingly. If you're planning on going that way, at least you know in good time. So it's a good Friday morning for traffic. Things are not crazy, and we hope it remains that way for most of the day. If it does change in any way, shape, or form, let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a
All right,
man who
so
believes in
while
punching
the
up, not
breastfeeding
down.
week is celebrated in this is the first week of August.
August. Yes.
Okay, some terminologies that you'll learn as we have this conversation today. EBF. This is exclusive breastfeeding. BFCI, and this means Baby Friendly Community Initiative. There's some more, I'll tell you. Just let's talk about this.
Okay.
When it comes to breastfeeding, I mean, every community in the world, almost every community in the world basically knows what breastfeeding is, and it's an expectation of every mother. When you get a baby, you breastfeed the baby for a while, and then you get to a point where you cease breastfeeding. Now, the conversation around the world has always been, at what point do you stop breastfeeding? Is it exclusive breastfeeding? Are you mixing breastfeeding with other means of nutrition? And then now when it comes to, what is it?
Nothing. I'm listening to you.
When it comes to the
Weaning?
that's it. Huh?
Seems like you're struggling here.
When it comes to,
It seems like you're
He
struggling here.
knew what it was, but it's not something that comes easily to our minds.
All right. So, can I help you a little bit?
Please help us a
A lot.
bit.
So, I mean, if we're looking at certain times, there was a time that things shifted a little bit, right? And it was natural that women would breastfeed their children. It was because that was what the option was. But as time changed, the formula-based feeding then came into, whereby companies now got into the whole idea of creating or manufacturing formula that babies could, because there were very many mothers then who were not able to produce their own milk or not produce adequate amounts of milk that the baby needed. Further research was done by the World Health Organization, organizations like UNICEF, governments, and just even from medical practitioners, and realized that actually the best nutrition that a baby could have was that he or she got from their mother through breast milk. So then the campaign started again, whereby
Why was it considered the best?
Because it was natural, and there were certain, I want to call them ingredients in the mother's milk, that you could not really replicate anywhere.
Like?
So, for example, the first milk that a baby gets from its mother, the colostrum, gave this baby every nutrient that they needed to be able to start off their life in terms of building their immunity, in terms of adequate hydration, and the vitamins and minerals that they needed to start off. Okay? So, and then to go on and say that mother to baby, it was adequate. And if they continued, they would find that they were able to build their immunity, stop them from getting certain diseases. The science behind it showed that there were certain diseases that a baby was less likely to get if they were on EBF. Okay? So this whole clamor, exclusive breastfeeding, this whole clamor and this whole awareness and this campaign drive then took on center stage for the longest time. And more and more then were pun intended, latched on to the idea that this actually would work. Times then changed after that, whereby more women, and then we're getting towards the 2000s now, where more women actually came to the realization, all right, this is great, I can have a baby, but I must go back to work. My career then again takes center stage. How am I going to be able to do this? And then we had the whole campaign of, mother breastfeeding friendly offices and more. And then formula companies came back, whereby they were able to, as close as possible, mimic a formula to as close as possible to breast milk that they could, so that mothers then did not have to go through the labor of pumping milk and all of this and sending and then having to remain at home or being incapacitated in any way so that they could work. Okay, but we've seen from the World Health Organization, even in this 1 week, and again, the calls have been renewed to say this is actually the best option. This is actually the best option, and they've been able to somehow link it even to environment, link it to say that use the natural forms. And as you look at me like that, I mean, we'll get somebody who will give us more information about this, but link it even to environment and say it actually is the safest form of nutrition for children, not just for human beings, but also for the environment.
What does environment come in?
That is now when we
environment is trees and...
No. I want this explained.
I'm
Breast
telling you, there's
milk
somebody...
environment, or
There's
we
not
wait for
me.
someone else
So-
okay, but let me ask the question. Since you are the champion that I have up close and can speak candidly to me, so the period when children are actually required, or WHO, UNICEF, and other networks that deal with children recommend, is 6 months.
Yes,
Okay.
exclusively.
Why 6 months? Why not 4? Why not 10?
Because at 6 months, there's certain things, what you call the milestones, that happens within a child's body. So now the digestive tract is now more or less fully developed, and they're able to now take on mastification, where now their teeth have started to develop and they can actually begin to chew. And so it's at that time that you want to begin to start introducing more solid forms of food. So it's nature plus milestones that are coupled one another, and then you can actually move forward. Before that, the body's not able to take it in, and it actually is enough, more than enough in terms of adequacy, this breast milk.
Quite aside from the interference, or as those who understand this line of work would say, negative marketing of these substitutes. Okay, what is it that actually hinders mothers, even in the absence of this? Because if you look at most rural areas, I do not think that this marketing of substitutes plays a very big role in whether the mothers breastfeed their children or not. So what are these other things that could prevent them from ensuring that this exclusive breastfeeding is actually actualized?
Well, what would it be? Poverty?
It could be many things, and maybe this is where the experts ought to come in. And
So
tell
let's
us.
bring in the expert. James Njeri works for Save the Children, and he's a nutrition specialist. He's joining us now on the line. James, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. You've had the introduction to the topic and what we are saying. The world has marked the World Breastfeeding Day, and we're talking about exclusive breastfeeding. Maybe we just get straight into that question that CT Muga has just raised. What is it that would make mothers, especially in the not urban areas, so in the rural areas, not continue with exclusive breastfeeding for the stipulated time?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. There are several reasons that could lead to mothers not being able to practice exclusive breastfeeding. One, mothers need to have that confidence that they have enough milk to breastfeed their babies for the 6 months without giving anything else. So that confidence comes with a lot of support. They will require support from their immediate people like spouse and then the family. They will require support from the community. All right. They also need to do that when they're in an environment that is protected. And this way now we bring in the policy framework and legal frameworks that protect mothers and shield mothers from undue influence that could lead them to move away from breastfeeding.
What
So
would that
several reasons.
undue? Can I just jump in there and ask, what would this undue influence be that would stop mothers from breastfeeding?
One thing that is well documented is the undue influence by the industry, who are very good and have financial muscle to advertise. Advertising has been shown to have influence on how people perceive things. So if mothers are not shielded from that undue influence, because most of the time industry would want to increase their sales, and therefore if allowed, they would go miles into reaching out to mothers, reaching out to general public, and promoting their product. So that undue influence through marketing has been shown to impact negatively on the decision of the mothers to breastfeed.
In Kenya, what percentage of mothers would you say are unduly influenced by this sort of marketing?
Come again, sorry?
I'm saying in Kenya, what percentage of mothers would you say are influenced by this negative marketing?
Okay, assessments have been conducted, especially in Kenya, to see the magnitude of advertising and the magnitude that has on mothers' decision. But what I can tell you is that we have significant mothers, especially in the urban settings, who are exposed to this type of influence. And mothers in the urban settings, and even exclusive breastfeeding rates in urban compared to rural is higher than urban, and that is attributed to the influence. What we found is that in KDHS, number of mothers who have come into contact with the promotion activities was put at 3%, but that is higher. If you go to health workers, because when we are looking at this, there are different ways of promotion. It could be targeting health workers, who in return, health workers now get to
influence the mothers.
To influence the mothers. That's one way. The other thing could be through the health system, like health facilities. We have seen instances where industries donate these products, like infant formula and the like. We have seen instances where industries sponsor health workers into conferences and also into trips that are funded. So all those elements, then health workers get to influence how mothers access this information. But luckily, I think in Kenya, the policy framework is good. We have adequate policies and legislation that shield that. The question is, have we implemented that to the full? And the answer is no. We still have a lot of work.
But at the same time, it sounds like the policy is working on shielding what you're calling the negative marketing instead of promoting the benefits of exclusive breastfeeding. So, for instance, nutritionists such as yourself and the others who the mothers will come into contact with, the healthcare workers, those ones should be the government's main advocates for exclusive breastfeeding. But by the time you're saying that those companies, the private sector has reached out to them and has been able to convert them into their own brand ambassadors, this is a failure of government to do its job.
I would say exactly. The biggest role that we all need to do is to promote benefits of breastfeeding. And that has been happening. If you look at the data, for example, in 2003, the proportion of mothers who practice exclusive breastfeeding was 3%. It was barely 3%. And now, as we speak, according to KDHS 2014-2015, we are at 61%. So there has been progressive improvement, and this is as a result of the strategies and the work that has been done over the years. So, but we are seeing we still have a lot to do, and the ministry, like I've said, has set the environment in which that they have demonstrated the intention that they want the best for the children and mothers.
Do we have a
So it's
legal
all of
framework
us
that
now.
supports what you're saying?
Yes, we have several policies. We have maternal, infant, and young child nutrition policy and strategy that government has put out there to guide how we implement these interventions. We also have an Act of Parliament, Breast Milk Substitutes Regulation and Control Act of 2012, and we also have Health Act that has provisions on how to protect breastfeeding. So we also have recently enacted workplace support that provides for all facility organizations or workplaces required to set up a place where mothers can breastfeed, or they can nurse their babies, or they could take breaks to go and express breast milk. So I believe legal framework is available now. What is really needed to be done is to implement these interventions.
What needs to happen so that these interventions can be implemented? Like you've just explained, I mean, we've got policy, we've got strategy, we've got laws that back up the policy and the strategy. And we have officers who came up with the policies and strategies in the government who obviously know the need to do this. So where is the gap?
Exactly. Like I started by saying, for mothers to breastfeed successfully, there are several things. And I think in the past, I know you and me have heard people saying breastfeeding is free and it can happen naturally. But what we have also has been documented is that mothers require a lot of support to be able to breastfeed successfully. One, for example, when a mother is breastfeeding, there are things that go on within her body for her to be able to breastfeed excessively. For example, the way the mother attaches the baby to the breast, the way the mother positions the baby, it can affect the way the baby suckles. So it requires some skilled support for the mother to understand these principles. And that's why now we have had a lot of training of health workers, because those are the people who primarily interact with the mothers at that point of delivery, or even before delivery or during the antenatal clinic. So mother need to be given this information. And then during delivery, the mother need to be supported to initiate breastfeeding within 1 hour. So when you can see when that practical support lacks, then you can believe me, it's not that easy. When the mother doesn't have that information, she will not know that this is the best for the baby.
So training has happened for the healthcare workers, and this has already been documented that this is something that needs to be done. So I'm still asking, so where is the gap? Why are these things not happening and giving us the results we want?
Okay. Like you say, yes, trainings have happened, but we haven't trained all the health workers who come into contact with the mothers. We still have new health workers who are being employed, and especially now with the health is devolved, so counties are employing health workers who are new, who require this skill. Then the other thing is that we still have work to inform mothers, to give that information so that all mothers get that information at the right time. So that is not optimal. Like, we haven't been able to reach all mothers.
What percentage of mothers have you reached to date?
Well, that's an important question. When we conduct assessments at population level, we have been able to establish that majority of mothers have the information. For example, they have the general information that they need to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. But to translate that into action, you see, like over 80% of mothers, when we do assessments, say, yes, we are supposed to breastfeed for 6 months without giving anything else. But translating that into practice, we see only 61 mothers now are exclusive breastfeeding. You see, there is a gap. So that difference tells you that in addition to just getting the information, there are many other things that need to go to the mother. So that's where we are in terms of statistics.
Okay, I'm hearing you talk about support, and it's clear that this support that we're looking at, for me, unless you could say otherwise, comes when we're looking at women who are in careers that need that kind of support, whereby they need to be able to breastfeed their children in a work setting. And we know that at the legislative level, we've seen quite a lot that has been done, or a lot that has been asked for in terms of that support. Do you see that with the bill that has come from the current chair of the Health Committee now, do we see that that would be translated into some of the support that you're talking about now, where we're talking about, lactation rooms for mothers in the corporate sector or even in any kind of office? If that comes into law, does that then translate to some of the support that you're talking about?
Well, that's a good question. Like we have said, having policies and legislation is one thing, but translating that into practice is another different thing. So what we have seen is that it's very good that the law that will demand corporate and even organizations to provide that environment that the mother or the working mother requires. So, but that is not enough. So what we need is actually to make sure that those lactation centers or places for breastfeeding have been supported by several things. One, the mothers also need to get those breaks off their desk. For example, if it's in the formal formal sector, and if it is in the informal sector, we need a replica of that mothers need time off to go and either express or breastfeed the babies. We have seen corporates that have even included creches into their places that mothers can bring their babies and they could take breaks and go and breastfeed. That is what is required to go over and above just providing a room. So I agree that has the potential to translate and increase the proportion of mothers who are exclusive breastfeeding even when they return to work, because that's largely for the formally employed women face a lot of challenges when they go back to work at 3 months and they're supposed to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. Then if that space is not supported by friendly HR policies and also practical support within the organization, then even with the room, then it may not be adequate.
Okay. So this is support clearly that's coming for women in the corporate sector. What kind of support, and you may have mentioned this in passing, but what kind of support then are we looking for women in the informal sector or women in rural areas where we're still looking at breastfeeding as something that carries such a huge weight of import? What support are you looking then for, or should governments and countries be looking for women across board regardless? Because the assumption is that if you're in the informal sector, you have a little bit more time, or that you're getting the psychosocial or counseling support that you need. So what then is important for women outside of the corporate sector when it comes to breastfeeding and everything else that comes along with it?
Wow, that's a big question, and it's the right conversation that we should be having even as a nation and globally. Yeah, like you have said, at least there are some framework that now protect the formal employed women in the formal sector. But in the Juakali and even in the rural, where the mother wakes up in the morning very early, goes to the farm or go to the day-to-day activities, maybe could be working in their own farms or could be working for other people in those farms, then at the moment, what we have been working around is to sensitize the communities, educate the communities and the household that this mother, first of all, even before we look at the government policies and frameworks, require the support at home. So that's where now the man, for example, comes in. Like, you need to take up some of these roles that the mother is supposed to do,
Yeah.
so that the mother has time to breastfeed. I think our mothers in Kenya, a study showed that the workload is one of the major challenges because they have so many things they need to do, and they actually don't have.
They don't get the
time
support
to
from
breastfeed.
their partners or from anybody else.
Yes. So the support here starts right in the house.
Yeah.
Like the man needs to take up some roles so that at least the mother can breastfeed. The other thing is providing. I think you will agree that if the mother has worries and fears that she will not have something to eat in the next meal, then that worry is big enough to stress
To
her.
impact
So the
the-
man need to provide and make sure that financial stresses are addressed. So other than that, the community surrounding, for example, if we have communities that have right education, right information, and they are able to protect breastfeeding mothers in different ways. For example, if you are the person providing casual labor and you have a breastfeeding woman, what can you do to that? Maybe allow them to come if they're supposed to come at 8, allow them to come at 10, do their work, and then still get the things that they need. So there is a lot that needs to be done. For example, if it is in the churches or in the market, so what can community do? Can it be sensitive to the mothers who are breastfeeding? We have seen even in the transport sector, when a mother with a baby who is breastfeeding gets into a matatu, what happens? Who gets precedence? So if we can educate community around this, then the mothers could have the right environment and be supported and feel that they are supported. Then finally, I think mothers need to feel proud to breastfeed. We still have proportion of mothers, and especially the young mothers, who still think breastfeeding is primitive. I mean, like it's not the right thing to do. So you will see them being very happy to maybe expose or use their breasts for other reasons, but they feel shy to breastfeed in public. So those are the things that we need to continue doing. That breastfeeding and the breast primarily are for feeding the baby. So they need to feel proud, even in public, even in the banking sector, even in halls and churches, to remove breast and feed the baby comfortably and proudly. So that is what we need.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Clearly, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but also realizing the steps that need to be taken definitely is one step in the right direction. So very happy that we could have this conversation. And as we continue to talk about this and look at the very many important things that need to be done, it's great to have as many hats thrown into the circle as possible.
James Njeri, thank you very much for your for agreeing to speak to us today. And of course, we hope that we can continue this conversation also in coming days as well.
Exactly. I will be very happy. And thank you so much for providing this platform. And I believe we will continue this conversation. So this week has been the World Breastfeeding Week, and we really want to continue informing people and the importance of breastfeeding and what needs to be done for us to have successful breastfeeding.
Asante sana. It's 9:30. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Take a look at the weather and traffic, and then the conversation continues. Remember, you can join the conversation at any point on 0719-012-600 or on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Spice a little bit more in Nairobi. Partly cloudy conditions at 18. We will see highs of 25 and lows of 12 today, and the chance of showers quite high for the capital. Looking into Njeri today, partly cloudy conditions at 18 degrees, highs of 22, and chance of thunderstorms. In Nakuru, Also, likely to be a wet afternoon with highs of 21 and lows of 12. Eldoret is partly cloudy at the moment at 16 and is also beckoning the rains, highs of 19 and lows of 12. Kisumu is going to be partly cloudy for most parts of the day, 23 degrees. We're looking at highs of 27 and lows of 19 with showers in the afternoon. Kakamega will also experience wet conditions with highs of 24 and lows of 15. Mombasa is likely to go into the weekend with some rains. It's currently experiencing light showers at 25 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Malindi is partly cloudy at 26, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Looking into Kampala at 21 degrees, it's partly cloudy, highs of 27 and lows of 18. And in Dar es Salaam, where it's partly cloudy at 26, it's going to be a bit of a warm day, highs of 31 and lows of 22. In Johannesburg, where it's mostly cloudy at 6 degrees, we're going to see a high of 15 and lows of 4 and partly cloudy conditions throughout. 24 degrees in Lagos and the likelihood of rain quite high with highs of 28 and lows of 22. We'll take a last peek into Europe, where in London it's 17 degrees and sunny conditions all through today, going to a very warm high of 36 and lows of 16. We'll take a look then into Paris, where it's clear skies at 23, sunny conditions going to continue through the day, and they're giving a high temperature warning of orange with highs of 37 and lows of 21. And we'll wrap things up in New York, where it's peaking into Friday morning with mostly cloudy conditions at 24. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 21 with a rainy afternoon.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
Rockland is looking really good this morning. We didn't have much issues. It would be nice if we could take Friday on Mombasa Road, copy and paste it into Monday. But I guess we can't. So we'll just have to hope that things remain this way well into Monday. Getting into the CBD, however, as you join in from Langata Road, Gong Road and Mombasa Road, as well as Westlands, there's crazy traffic jam inbound on Haile Selassie. And that means that everybody's getting into town at the same time. But it shouldn't be too crazy. I'm going to give you one more reminder that tomorrow, certain parts of the Thika Superhighway will be closed for the construction of the footbridge. So we want to be careful about that. Unfortunately, there's been an accident right around Lusaka Road. That's been cleared up now, so it shouldn't cause too much traffic coming out of industrial area. Okay? Okay. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Talk to us if need be. It's all good.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
27 minutes to 10 o'clock, to the end of the show, to the beginning of a weekend. For us, at least.
For somebody.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so something big happened this week. And this was that humongous, it's horrendous explosion in Beirut. So far we have gathered a lot of information that's being reported out of Beirut. How many people have died so far, CT? The latest death toll as of early this morning was approaching 140.
Yes.
And many people who have been injured. Many
going beyond it, really.
Going beyond 140,
yes.
Right? Many that have been injured, many that have lost their homes and shelter, so they basically have been rendered homeless. And the government's explanation of what happened, how many tons were they?
2,750 tons of this explosive.
Of ammonium nitrate.
That's a bomb.
That is a huge bomb.
That's
a huge bomb.
Even heavier than this is the weight of the irresponsibility of somebody or a group of people somewhere. That weighs a lot heavier in my mind than the measurement of the tons. Because years ago, almost a decade ago, somebody sent a warning. Somebody said, look, this needs to be moved from here. Or there needs to be a plan put in place. There needs to be something put in place so that we can take care of this, because we're looking at extremely volatile material here that could cause problems. Somebody said it, right? It was ignored. It was forgotten. It wasn't given adequate attention. And look at what we are looking at today. And it just points me to the fact that, look, such things that could be so small in terms of an action that is needed then results in the loss of 140 lives. It results in the injuries of 5,000 people. It results in a country then having to ask themselves the question, and the world having to ask themselves the question, if they're ever really going to be able to get out of this one. We must also understand that Lebanon, at where it was almost at knee-bend status already. The economy was suffering. I mean, they were there, they were on their knees already. The economy was suffering. The people were protesting at the fact that governments continue to pilfer public
The health
funds.
system
The
was
health
on its
system
knees.
was
The
in a
banking system
mess.
on its knees.
So then this comes and literally blows everything out of the water. People left homeless in a capital city where, if we want to be honest, I mean, Beirut, walking through the streets of Beirut, it would be easy to say that this would be one country that would be able to be a shining star like those of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or Qatar, for example. It could easily do this. But irresponsibility, mismanagement, and poor leadership got Beirut or got Lebanon to where it was.
How did they get here?
With this,
by
is
the
it
way,
going to
Nduh,
sink them even further?
They preceded the very thing you're saying. They were there. They were the jewel of that particular region for the longest possible time.
Absolutely.
When all the other countries you've mentioned were nowhere in sight. They were just desert
Then what
nations.
happened?
There's this little detail that often happens, and this is the detail of politics. Regional politics. Their own issues with Israel. Then political parties within the country, their issues with each other. Some supporting one faction as opposed to the other. Then the issue of Palestine came right in because Lebanon was seen as the one country that constantly supported. And by the way, just so that you understand, Lebanon shares a border with Israel, just so that you understand. Israel is not an extremely big country, but one of the borders it shares is with Lebanon. So it's not as though when you talk about Lebanon, you're talking about some country that is far away. If you're going towards the Black Sea, you can actually drive alongside a wall that is the border between Israel and Lebanon. So these issues compounded. So the economic status of Beirut, the economic status of Lebanon, the development that it had undergone, with extremism coming in and them being called religious fundamentals and them trying to also impose a certain way of doing things, it was a mix of many things that was guaranteed to take any development or progress of this country south.
From my layman's view of this, I see one thing that's emerging for me with Lebanon is the issue of sovereignty. Sovereignty of the people, of the ordinary citizens. I mean, this is a country that was in a civil war for a decade and a half. Then this is a country that, because of whatever is happening within the country, because of its proximity to this one neighbor, because of a proximity to the other neighbor up north, and what is happening in terms of proxy wars between countries in the region,
and the other neighbor.
You're caught up in the middle, and therefore your system is constantly being bombed. Okay, and then they're kind of the system of government that they ended up picking up, which is not the people. I wouldn't say it's the people who got themselves there. It's how it ended up becoming for them. We have a system in Lebanon where it's we've got to share the spoils. And we've got to agree that we share the spoils.
Absolutely.
At least 18 recognized religious sects. And then you have, these are big ones. You've got the Shias, you've got the Sunnis, you've got Christians, you've got a huge rebel movement called Hezbollah that is supported by a government. And that government ensures that Hezbollah is strong because of the proximity of Hezbollah to launch an attack against this government's arch enemy. Now, surely, this is what I'm talking about, the sovereignty.
By the way, of interest, many people claim it's a Muslim country, but it's only 54% of the population that's actually Muslim. 41% is Christian.
It is.
Yes, and 5% Druze. Don't ask me what Druze is.
So here you
it's actually a very unique
country. Very unique country.
Given its geographical location. And remember, neighbors, Syria.
Up there, Syria.
Yes.
Down here, Israel.
Yes. Now, imagine if there's a problem in Syria. What do you think is going to happen?
The last couple of years of where we've seen a problem in Syria, people are running off, heading towards Lebanon, then seeking a way out. So, and then who is this that's fighting a proxy war in Syria? We know the powers of the world that are fighting a proxy war in Syria. America on one side, Russia on the other, Iran. General Soleimani, who was killed, had gotten to a point where he was sitting back comfortably saying, you know what, I have set the proper ground. Syria, we are good. We've crossed over into Lebanon. Hezbollah is doing very well. Getting to a system where the president can only come from one faction if the prime minister comes from a different faction, if the speaker of the national parliament
also comes from another
faction. And this is what we must agree. This is where the conversation, and I was saying sovereignty, I bring it back to our own country. We are heading into that direction.
We're actually there.
Where we are already starting to say, you know what, because this country is big, we've got to have a system at the top that accommodates everybody. This is the danger that I see.
Luckily, we don't have Syria as our neighbor.
Why?
And Israel on the other side.
And
But
Israel on the other.
But the political thinking behind it, Eric, is actually sound because on the one hand, I agree with you, but on the other, I would argue that for them to have arrived at this, they must have tried other methods that didn't quite work. And remember, one of the greatest influences within that country is actually France. France has a very big say, very proportionately bigger than other countries, than any other country in the world. And that's why you find their president actually took himself.
Yes, he was in Beirut
yesterday. To try and see what needs to be done to offer support and encouragement.
And encouragement
yes,
from
exactly.
And saying this is how we are going to.
We've seen a number of countries come forward and, offer their support from, relief food to medical support and, in terms of even financial support during this time and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. But this is the thing, to take the country back to the place whereby it can actually maybe just function, just a wobble a little bit, wearing crutches, maybe in a walker and a wheelchair, but at least be able to function. But unfortunately, even as doomsday as it sounds, this is just treating the symptoms. This is treating the symptoms of, this catastrophe that has taken place in order to at least on the face of it get things to be sorted out. But if I would believe they're at the cusp of then asking themselves, or Lebanon is a cusp at asking itself at this point, it's either it's sink or swim now. Are you going to get out of a place whereby everything needed to be flattened for us to then have a look at how we're going to be able to get out of this? Or are we just going to keep going down deeper and deeper into this abyss of mismanagement and terrible chaos as it has been?
Eric has brought in the question of sovereignty. And there's something interesting. If you talk about this region, and you're talking about the influences and the mix of everything inside it, you could actually argue that this is a genuinely democratic country. Where the problem, and it's been pointed at over and over and over, is symptomatic of many third world countries. And Lebanon doesn't actually feature as a third world country, not really.
No, all you need to do is walk through the streets of Beirut and
Yes.
see that, for example,
Now,
before this, of course.
If you're talking about failed leadership, failed political systems, if you wanted to do a study on these, you could come to Beirut and do a study on all these things, because the leadership seems to have let the people down over and over, with all the resources, with all the connection, with everything that they have, the levels of education that the citizenry have, the levels of awareness that the citizenry have.
Which is why I'm arguing against that system of government of saying that let's accommodate everybody here at the top and ensure that everybody has a seat at the table.
What else could they do?
Because what they end up having is they have people at the seat of the table who are only beholden by the people that have brought them there. So there's accountability goes through the window.
Go south.
Yeah. The president is here. You cannot remove me because you know what? If you remove me, I'm the one who's representing Christian interests here. Not necessarily representing Christian interests, but representing your own
individual interests.
You're sitting there saying Christian.
Now,
and you've convinced your people that, as long as I'm here, then Christians have a seat at the table. Same for Hezbollah, same for the others. This is the danger that they have, that the system has failed because there's no accountability. The system has failed because there's absolutely no way that the prime minister can go and challenge the president, or the prime minister can go and seek to have the removal of the speaker of the parliament, or the president seeking even if we remove the prime minister, you've got to replace the prime minister with somebody from the same sect. You're basically saying that because you've somebody from Central Kenya as the president, if you remove this person from Central Kenya as president, you've got to look for somebody else from Central Kenya to come and occupy that seat.
It's interesting
We
that
have
you say
started heading that direction.
It's
But
very
we got to
true.
a point where we're saying this seat called the cabinet minister for interior and national security is somebody who comes from a certain region. Because our person has left this seat, you must replace with our person. You've seen that danger in this country. You remove Olelenku from interior, there's a campaign from the Maasai and the Maa community that you must replace with
Somebody from that region.
somebody from that region.
It's a thinking that
Danger.
has been encouraged.
Yes.
Instead of asking, who do we have that would best suit this position? But then, Eric, consider, for an instance, you can't discount that thinking completely. It shouldn't dominate, but you can't. Why I'm saying you can't is because there's something called regional representation, and this is a thinking that is throughout the world. That is why you have parliaments, you have senate, so that is taken care of, as in you have your people representing your interest.
In the assembly.
Yes, but you have a representation. You cannot say you're not represented.
Yep.
But then when you have a government like ours, and given our history, the understanding is that this thing we keep calling a cake, for a portion of it for it to actually reach your region, you need someone who sits at the table where the division of this cake is being discussed. And it's not in parliament, it's not in senate, it is in cabinet.
It's very interesting that you say that, because then this is it's this whirlpool of interest and individual interest, and then who's represented in government. If you want to look at what was happening, or what has been happening in Lebanon, is actually to the distaste of the general population.
Yep.
And that's why we've been seeing the protests that we've been seeing for the last 12 months, because we may not remember, but the protests have not stopped.
It brought in everybody. It brought in
yeah.
Christians, it brought
Everybody
in the
came into
Shias,
the pool
the
of the
Sunnis,
protest.
all of them were
Yeah.
there and were saying, no,
we cannot
no,
have
no.
this anymore.
This system, the way it's working, is not
No.
serving us. They
Yeah.
were not saying that,
Our
because
people
we've
are
had
not
a Shia
represented.
is occupying this seat, we should. No. They said
Everybody
remove.
See,
came
Eric,
in
all
and
those,
said,
System
all
has
those,
failed.
all those people found commonality. Their backgrounds may have been different, and the representation was supposed to actually represent the diversity.
Yep.
But when they got there,
they realized this
One
is
mind.
actually not happening.
And it is because, City, I'll put it to you, it's because that is what the cabal in the leadership, that's what they were pushing for. When they were fighting the civil war, when they were going to have these conversations in Qatar,
this is what they were all
this
gunning
is what they were gunning for. That was their BBI moment. We are going to create a system of government that includes, that accommodates all of us.
so that
all
we
of
can
us
all share in the
share.
spoils.
They get to that position and they keep recruiting one another, but it's not about serving the people. It's
No.
about ensuring that
No,
all of us
no.
are in this room.
Actually, then in that case, Eric, your example was absolutely spot on, because it's like mirroring our country. It's like deciding, okay, we've given you the armed forces, that is yours.
Yeah.
Eat it.
You keep quiet now.
Yes. Then we've given you the port. Eat it. Okay. We've given you roads. Eat it. We've given you health.
Accountability. You cannot come and question how I'm running this.
Because when you come, you're told, but did we not give you that ministry?
This is mine.
Yes. Why are you interfering with mine?
And if you start making noise, I go back to the people and say, you see what they're trying to do? Trying to marginalize us.
And as we've taken it even further, we even have a county system where this yours and mine is actually truly represented. The money comes to your neck of the woods, not anybody else's. Others have theirs. You also have yours. And yet, then they gather into smaller groups within this community of yours, and then you have clan issues, and you have what issues, and the same thing is replicated. So,
and then, unfortunately, now for the case of Lebanon, these other external forces find proxies to use.
yes, they do.
So you'll find that Saudi Arabia, because it was to have an influence here, because we know that Iran is trying to have an influence, I must also have my influence here. So Saudi Arabia looks for the Hariri family. Then these guys are using the Hezbollahs. Then these are... Now, accountability is not to the people. Accountability is to that external force.
Accountability is to their own self-interest.
Yes, a certain prince of a certain kingdom can summon a prime minister of an independent country and go and keep him locked up in a room and tell him, go back and resign. And the prime minister goes and says, I have resigned. Then he arrives home and says, you know what? I had been forced, but I was locked up in a room. I didn't have a choice. I had to say I have resigned. What does that tell you? That this country has absolutely zero sovereignty.
What is also of interest, the people realize it.
Yeah.
And they blame the lack or the absence or the giving up of the sovereignty on their leaders. And that's why they could unite and say, folks.
That's why they've been in the streets for the last
It doesn't really
12
matter what
months.
our background is.
No, everybody together.
We are being harmed equally here.
That's the thing. And that's 12 months in the streets. The only thing that stopped this now was this bomb that happened Tuesday. Okay, I'm calling it a bomb. Was this explosion?
It was a bomb,
right.
my dear.
Was this explosion that happened Tuesday? Right?
What makes a bomb a bomb?
Ammonium nitrate.
Precisely.
C4.
Right. So this is what we saw.
Yes.
But the thing is, and I think if we can, I don't think that lessons that can be learned or things that we can then glean from this, we have to wait until the conclusion of this process. I think that there are very many things that we can see occurring in Lebanon today that we can actually say, you know what, it's possible that countries if we're going to bring this back to the continent and say that there's certain things that we can see, pointers that would have happened in Lebanon that are happening now in different countries whereby we know of or that we inhabit, that this is a direction that it is very easy to go. Do you see how easy it was? Because the Lebanon of 15 years ago is not the Lebanon of today. It is very, very different. But it was so easy to spiral out of control. It is very easy to spiral out of control. Until now, the people are in the streets asking for answers, demanding that certain things be done on their governments. And I'm saying at this point that it really doesn't need to get to explosion level before you actually see this is what is going on and for you to be able to do something about it, whether it's in terms of your agitation or letting the powers that be understand that you are aware of what's going on. And again, I go back to, citizen participation and saying that, you know what, or agitation and saying we can see very clearly. We can see through the smoke screen. We can see beyond the red herrings. We can see all of this. How then do we make sure that you don't get to the point where it explodes?
The question that we've been asking ourselves with regard to certain things in this country, how did they get here? How did you come from being the Paris of the Middle East to this chaotic country that we now see?
It was the ignorance of a small issue. And this is it. I mean, it's almost paradoxical. But what happened on Tuesday, is an exact replica of how things went out the window. Because you see many, many situations whereby one thing could have been taken care of, but it was ignored.
Yep.
Somebody should have done their job. Somebody should have been interested in the development of the country as a whole, as opposed to what they could glean individually for themselves or for their sect.
Yep.
And what do you have? 6 years later, it blows up in your face.
Well, even the reasons why people are going out on the streets complaining about the economy.
Right.
Something as simple as power. Why is there no power? They complain from the people of Lebanon. They'll tell you we don't have power because there's somebody who is in power who wants to sell us
Who's circumventing and selling it.
And by the way, that power when it's available is 3 hours a day.
Yes, for 3 hours. The rest of the time, generator and fuel.
Sort yourself out. Does it
And they know.
resonate with your part of the world?
Yes,
generator,
it does. It's the same thing. This is what I'm saying. Can we not point out and see?
Imagine.
So now, as opposed to making it a generating economy, right? Can we not say, guys, this is not the way it should be? It should not be that in parts of Lagos or in parts of Abuja or Benue State or Port Harcourt or Kaduna, that when you're building a house or building an estate, that you have to factor in the generator because your government is actually not doing what they should be doing. When your government is supplying the entire national grid to the neighbor up north, it shouldn't be. And those are the questions that we should be asking, as opposed to accepting the status quo, be questioning and saying, this should not be. We are aware.
What are some of the reasons why this continues to happen in Nigeria? Why is it that the government never feels the pressure to stop that, to ensure that now we have better connectivity to electricity?
The government is also aware that the people will make noise for a certain period of time, and after some time they will keep quiet.
So nobody else in government is making noise.
Nobody's talking about it. We can
checks and balances and accountability at government level gone.
So maybe
Political
every
level.
now and then we'll come in and we'll supply power for 3 days out of the week, and then on the 4th day we'll maybe supply power, and then Nigerians will clap their hands and say, NEPA don't bring lights, and then we forget about it.
Bas.
No,
but
they realize this.
What is of interest about Lebanon, given just the turmoil that country has experienced? It has this unique feature of having more people in the diaspora than you actually have the citizenry of Lebanon within Lebanon.
Very true. I grew up with a lot of my friends being Lebanese. So when I made my first trip to Beirut, it was on the recommendation of friends of mine who grew up in Nigeria that were Lebanese nationals. So exactly what you're saying, that they imported a lot of their people. They exported their terrorism. I mean, their tourism is what I was trying to say. They exported their tourism. I know, right? They exported their culture. They exported their way of doing business. So because then how did we know?
If I start just with West Africa and look at just the population of Lebanese within that part of the world, and then come further down, and then go to Europe, and then go even to America, the estimate is something like 8 to 14 million in the diaspora.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, it's because of what was happening in their country during those years. The civil war forces people out. Look at the number of Syrians you're going to see in the world in the year between 2020 and 2030 or 2040.
Do you know what is also of interest? There is a very significant Syrian population in Lebanon. Significant. Did you also know that there's a significant population of people from Ecuador in Lebanon? All I'm saying is that, Lebanon was a lovely melting pot in that part of the world. Lovely, in the sense that it encouraged, it embraced, it welcomed cultures and diversity.
Yeah.
And look at how, over the years, it has just sunk from one low to another. To another, to another. And that low is what has precipitated this. This was an accident that could have been avoided.
100%.
Easily.
Nobody could take action because nobody was answerable to anybody else.
And nobody...
I am here because I have a right to be here.
And nobody was accountable. Yes.
Nobody's accountable. You cannot tell me, who are you? You're the head of the pot. What are you saying? Oh, this thing needs to move.
Are you aware that
it's
the pot is...
It's interesting now that they've made an arrest. 16 people rather have been detained in Lebanon, and people are angry. If it was possible for the Lebanese to get any angrier, this is where they are now, saying that what we are saying in this room, that something should have been done about this. Somebody ignored the way we've been ignored for the last decade as people in terms of development of this country. Somebody ignored it. And again, things have blown up in flames.
Do you think that our leaders look at some of these things and actually realize that they are taking us along that same garden path?
It would be the hope that they did.
Because even these health issues we keep talking about, okay, it's not that the government is not trying. Oh, no. But this isn't a question of trying. It's a question of doing. But for you to do something right, it means you must have the frame of mind that enables you to do the right thing.
Our leaders are seeing what the leaders of Lebanon were seeing a couple of years back. Our leaders are seeing an opportunity to entrench themselves and secure their positions in authority. This thing of you guys complaining about, pesa imekuliwa na nani. No. We bring up the conversation.
That is your problem.
Yeah, that's your problem. Health is working, you're fighting COVID. That is your problem. What we want to discuss is we're going to have a referendum at the end of this year. Okay? And where we're going to change our system of government to accommodate more and more people. That is the kind of conversation that they'll have.
That is the development agenda we have.
Yes.
And the development agenda is called the BBI.
It's BBI. And you guys, whatever you're talking about, now we want an audit of how the money has been spent. As long as people are sitting around a table and they're in agreement, whatever audit comes to that table will never see any light of day. So shauri yenu. Dangerous times ahead if we don't watch out. Coming to the end of the show this morning.
The line we must not dance with is the status quo in this country. And God continues to be good, but we must not encourage the status quo that harms the very citizenry of this country.
Very good one.
Very
good one. Very apt. Asante sana for tuning into the Situation Room this week from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday. We'll be back on Monday, 6 to 10 and throughout the week. From now until 3 o'clock, uninterrupted music, sugar and spice and everything nice. And then Monique will be here to take you home on Spice Drive from 3 to 7. And then the adults in the room are here every weekday as well from 7 p.m. to 10 o'clock. Have a lovely weekend, folks. CT Muga, Nduh Okoh and Eric Latiff signing off. It's 10 o'clock.